OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7:30 on this Monday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. It is Owen and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. Plenty coming your way between now and then. We will have Mark Lawrenson chatting to us about the weekend's Premier League. Alan Quinlan will be talking rugby. The performance rankings as ever coming your way in just a little while. And we will have Kevin O'Donovan, Chief Executive of Cork GAA, with us after 9 o'clock this morning, because he thinks a newer version of Proposal B could possibly be the future of the All-Ireland Football Championship. You can get in touch with us by dropping us a tweet at Off The Ball. We'd love to hear your suggestions for the performance rankings this morning. You can comment as well on the YouTube stream. Ger Gilroy, what's the crack?
Owen, how are you? What's going on?
Oh, very well. Lovely Christmas tree.
Thanks very much. That was the most of the weekend taken care of.
Oh, it's highly impressive. This is kind of like the sort of series of pieces we get into over the course of December, where Team OTB get judged on their dedication to Christmas. I think Will O'Callaghan was last year's winner, wasn't he?
Very good. That would make sense. Yeah. How's your man cave coming along?
Not
your bachelor pad.
My bachelor pad has little to no. Do you know what? I actually tried looking for an advent calendar the other day, and I couldn't find one. That's as festive as my bachelor pad would have got, and at the moment there's no evidence that it's December.
They have them in Lidl if you're looking for the Morality or any of the other supermarket multiples. They tend to be chocolate ones. Is that what you're talking about? Is that what you want?
Yes,
like a little,
yes.
A little more chocolate in your life.
Why? What else is there? Is there other versions of advent calendars that exist these days?
I don't know. I think well, there is. There's the one that was doing the rounds, wasn't there? That's the world's most expensive one. You get like a Fendi bag worth 22 grand, depending on the day of the month. That might also be up your street, Owen.
Well, it absolutely
I know you're big on your Fendi bags.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Ger, how likely is it that as a man in your 40s you were going to ask Santa for an Aston Villa jersey with Gerrard 8 on it this Christmas? I mean, he's just not answering the question. He's just decided to not answer the question. I was just going to ask you about how much you love Steven Gerrard, and you decided no. This is not the question for you. Like, I mean, are you all in on the tribe now after the amazing start?
It's a good start. It's a very good start, and let's wait and see. He's saying all the right things. I don't know if you saw any of the pre-match build-up where Jamie Carragher went and interviewed him, and he had the opportunity. Jamie Carragher basically did the stereotypical, well, I'm going to give you 5 minutes here to effectively poo on your predecessor, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Everything here was brilliant. The medical staff, the physical training, the facilities, the squad, it's excellent. So I really like, he said he liked Dean Smith, and Dean Smith seems like a top lad. So yeah, look, he's done all the right things. He said all the right things. The results are good, but I do wonder, were we on the verge of seeing a turnaround from Dean Smith? Maybe not. Maybe the result in Norwich at the weekend suggests that Dean Smith is obsessed now with 5 at the back. That's his white whale.
Yeah, it's it did strike me yesterday that it was a smart career move by Gerrard. That this is a really, really good bunch of players, and of course, I mean, it seems that he's got them playing in the right way for sure. But he wasn't going to take his project if he thought that this playing group was doomed. No, he certainly seems like. The stuff that I was worried about him as a manager so far has not proven to be correct. Like the perpetual fear that he played with, while at the same time being courageous, the moral courage and the desire to be totally and utterly in charge of everything. That's going to be interesting to see how he can release that a little bit and make sure that the players don't feel like they're being perpetually judged by somebody who has very high standards. But so far, so good. Like, it's 4 games in, new manager bounce. Let's take the new manager bounce out of that and see where we are after Christmas. Let's see where we are in March. He's top 10 now. That game against Leicester was huge because it actually allowed them to leapfrog Leicester. Like, if they finish ahead of Leicester at the end of the season, that will be considered a good season. Yeah, for sure. We'll come back to Leicester as well, and Brendan Rodgers in the performance rankings. It is 7:34 on this Monday morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Let's tell you what the schedule is between now and 10 o'clock then this morning. Coming up in just a few moments is the performance rankings. Mark Lawrenson then will join us at 8:10 to reflect on the weekend's football. The sports page is coming your way at 8:30. Kieran Donaghy, the face on most of the back pages. Alan Quinlan at 10:09 then, reacting to Ulster's disappointing defeat to Ospreys, the Leinster win over Connacht on Friday night, and perhaps a bit on Johan van Granen and his future as he looks to be linked away. Munster, of course, in action this weekend. Kevin O'Donovan then, as I mentioned, will be with us at 9:10 to chat about what the next GAA Congress might hold. What should the new proposal be? He's calling it Proposal B+. We'll get his thoughts on that after 9 o'clock, and then there's some OTB reaction to the weekend at 9:30. But at 7:35 on this Monday morning, it is time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. Our performances was just lacked that intensity.
Every Monday morning here on OTB AM, we go through the good, the bad and the grand when it comes to the weekend's action. And there really is only one place to start for anybody who is flicking through the channels over the course of the weekend, and it is in Saudi Arabia yesterday at the Formula 1. It was one of the most incredible races, according to people who know a hell of a lot better than me in the history of Formula 1, certainly one of the races of the season. An unbelievable season. And that, like, just before we get into this, Ger, have we given Drive to Survive a little bit too much credit for transforming the popularity of Formula 1? Because it certainly seems to me as if the main reason why everybody is obsessed with this particular season is because it is genuinely the best season in living memory in Formula 1. You've got one of the greatest sporting rivalries.
No.
Potentially. So it deserves a whole pile of credit for a certain degree of interest. But the reason why yesterday is being spoken about, the main reason why yesterday is being spoken about so much, is that you have two incredible drivers in this incredible rivalry. And I think Netflix have they've done an incredible job, but I think they're getting just a little bit too much credit, because the main reason why this is good is because of the actual sport, not because of the documentary.
But hang on, no one cared about the sport. The sport could have been great, but nobody cared about it for years and years and years and years, because it was completely closed shop. No one ever saw anything. No one ever knew anything about these people. And now all of a sudden people are interested in the mechanics and the engineers and the lads doing the... Hello, Santa.
He's here, 19 days early?
Yeah, a little early. No, I don't agree. I think that Netflix have done a great job of making the casual sports fan interested in flicking on at all. The fact that you do have a title race is great, but I don't think you would have had the interest in the title race, even if the title race was great, without the Drive to Survive phenomenon. And like, Netflix has become this global massive beast where they can turn anything into a TV show. And they made Tiger King popular, Rowan.
Yeah,
I'll never forgive them for that.
That's true, but in some sort of weird parallel universe, if there was an actual sporting event based on Tiger King, would you watch... What was the name? Joe Exotic. Would you watch Joe Exotic chase tigers in a sporting sense, or cage tigers? You probably wouldn't. Whereas people obviously are interested in the sport here, because the sport that is attached to it is really, really good. And of course, there's a bit of synchronicity going on here. The timing is great. It's both of these things coming to a head. But yesterday was just incredible. If you missed this, it's worth going back, catching as much of the race as you can, catching a lot of the post-race interviews as possible. We might actually hear from Lewis Hamilton now, just to set the scene here, because he wasn't overly happy with Max Verstappen, I think it's fair to say, in the aftermath of the race. Here's Lewis Hamilton.
For me, I really had to try and just keep my cool out there, which was really difficult to do. Sorry, I can't hear so much. And I've raced a lot of drivers through my life in the 28 years. I've come across a lot of different characters. And there's a few, like at the top, which are kind of over the limit. Rules kind of don't apply, or don't think of the rules. But today I just try to do my talking on the track, keep the car in between the white lines, and do it the right way. I was trying to catch, there's so many things were sent at us. Obviously we got the pole, then we lost out, then I got back past, then he passed over the curb. Like, there was just so many different crazy curveballs that were sent.
In your mind, does Max fall into that category for you, about the drivers that you mentioned earlier?
He's over the limit for sure, but yeah. I mean, I've avoided collision on so many occasions with the guy, and I don't always mind being the one that does that, because you live to fight another day, which I obviously did. So
there's some great photographs on the back pages this morning. The Daily Telegraph here, possibly the one where it's most clear, where you've got Lewis Hamilton with the trophy in the air and Max Verstappen with his hands on his hips in the background. He didn't join in with the champagne afterwards. He just walked off with his bottle and got out of there pretty quickly. He said afterwards, the sport is more about penalties than racing, and for me this is not Formula 1. A lot of things happened which I don't fully agree with, which just spices this up beautifully for next weekend. We
should talk about that, because that's the bit, right? Now, I know nothing about what would have happened or anything beyond the Drive to Survive element of it, so we'll talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about later on in the week about this. But Verstappen was told, because of a penalty, to pull over and to allow his main rival for the title to pass him out, and he slowed down and allowed him to pass out. And that's the bit that we've just heard the clip of there, where Lewis Hamilton is pissed off about the fact that he ended up crashing into the back of him, right? So he blames Verstappen, but he didn't know that Verstappen was slowing down on purpose to let him pass. So was it just bad communication? Was it a little bit of, let's spice this drama up a bit here? You know, what could we do to make this go all the way to the end? I'm not suggesting that anything so cynical as ratings and that kind of stuff would have factored into the decision making, but it cooks the soup nicely for next week.
There was this growing sense on Sky Sports throughout the evening, a bit more of a sympathetic tone towards Max Verstappen, because it did feel at the start that it was like, this is a disgrace. You know, he really did just slow down deliberately in front of Hamilton, and he rammed into the back of him, and you know, this is not good from him. But as the evening progressed, it was kind of like, well, Hamilton didn't really know that the instruction was being given for him to overtake. Now, it did seem at the time, in fairness, Verstappen would deny this wholeheartedly, but it did seem at the time that he could have given Hamilton a little bit more room to pass him out, and didn't do so. Now, he says he gave him plenty of room, and you know, he says within the laws that was absolutely fine what he did, so you have to take his word for it. But it was the second time in the race that he was instructed to let Hamilton overtake him. So I'm sure, as a man with a massive ego, as a man with a massive competitive edge, you're like, twice in one race, and he was pretty aggrieved by the decision to actually let him do so. But he goes into the back of him, a bit of debris falls off the car, and ultimately then when he does allow him to take over, Hamilton just takes it home. The thing that they were saying on Sky, though, throughout the evening as well, is that yes, this was a moment of really high drama, but the Red Bull tyres were in such a state that perhaps Mercedes would have won in the end, regardless of the penalties, regardless of being told to be allowed to overtake him. So maybe in the end we would have reached the end conclusion. But I think at the end of the day, going into the final weekend in Abu Dhabi, it's going to be an incredible weekend next weekend, tied on the same amount of points. It is. You couldn't write this, even if you were creating your own Netflix show. This is exactly what you would write. This is exactly what you would have going into your final episode of Drive to Survive with WWE. If this was completely fictitious, this is exactly the thing that you would script, and it just it sets things up perfectly for next weekend.
There'd be a love triangle as well. Obviously, they'd be interested in the same love interest, whoever that might be. That would be the only. It's like Days of Thunder, something bad like that from the 90s. Did you ever see Days of Thunder, Owen?
No, I haven't. Come on, tell me about Days of Thunder. Give me the breakdown.
Well, one of Nicole Kidman's early Hollywood roles. Obviously, she was Australian and came through on a TV series called Bangkok Hilton and the movie Dead Calm, which was kind of a bit of a sleeper hit. But this was her big breakthrough because it was partnering Tom Cruise. Robert Duvall is playing Robert Duvall in it, and Tom Cruise plays Tom Cruise in it, and Nicole Kidman plays the love interest, who's a doctor and who gets sent into his room to see him after he crashes. It's like IndyCar, and he, you know, because she's too pretty, and in the 90s it was a Hollywood trope that pretty people couldn't be smart. He assumed that she's not a doctor, but in fact a stripper, and hilarity ensues, Owen, and they fall in love, and such is life.
Who is the Nicole Kidman?
probably couldn't make that today now.
No.
Now that you say it out loud.
Yeah, no, that's very, very 1990 right there. That's very early Tom Cruise. We just got to find out who the Nicole Kidman is in all of this thing as they go to Abu Dhabi next week. Like,
well, it's going to be the director of whoever has the best car, isn't it? That's what the real love interest is for these guys. They only love themselves and their fast cars.
And that was one of the main images from last night. Like the narrative had swung in favour of Verstappen just for a brief moment when things were chaotic in the middle, where the camera shows inside the Mercedes team and Wolf takes off his headset and absolutely slams it on the ground like a really annoyed NFL coach. You know, when like the headset, does Belichick give a lot of damage to the headset, or am I making that up completely? Like I think there was definitely some LSU coach a couple of years ago who made a big deal of destroying his headset. Toto Wolff yesterday was very much in that mould, and it was just like, God damn it. And well, in the end, he was the winner.
Yeah, like Toto Wolff, for example. Would you have known who he was without Drive to Survive, really?
I think so, but
would you have had any interest in those backroom staff?
No.
Maybe the sport is actually, and we're giving the credit to the wrong people here. The sport decided that it needed Drive to Survive, and it needed to make the cars more interesting than just the cars, and that's the people who build the cars and fix the cars and hone the speed of every individual part of it, and they've done that really well. Like, it is a really good template for other sports to follow. Some sports don't need to, but other sports clearly do, because it was kind of moribund. It had become, irrespective of the quality of the driving, because Lewis Hamilton's been doing this level of quality for a decade and a half at this point, but no one really cared, did they?
I'd say people cared. Like I think that's actually a really interesting point.
Not in big numbers. Not big numbers of people. The dyed-in-the-wool petrol-head fans who always cared about Formula 1, but that number got smaller and smaller and smaller until they opened it up into the soap opera that it is now. Yeah,
like I absolutely think that there's something there in terms of the world becoming aware of how unbelievably talented you have to be, how in the 0.0001% of talented drivers you need to be a Sergio Perez, for example. So to do what Lewis Hamilton has done, to actually win this amount of titles, to be in a position to overtake Michael Schumacher as having the most drivers' championships in the history of the sport, I definitely think it kind of crystallises the achievement of what that is, whereas maybe prior to Drive to Survive, the casual fan perhaps didn't quite understand just what an outrageous achievement this is. And I guess there's definitely an element around Hamilton that he is underappreciated, and that definitely changes. Like, it's true when it comes to the backroom teams, those little stories that you get throughout the series of people messing up on a pit stop or whatever it is, like, you're not going to get that otherwise. You're not going to get that on Sky Sports on the weekend. So of course that has completely transformed people's appreciation of that. So I accept that it's done a good job, but I think the sport has done the best job for itself this season, because it's been absolutely incredible. Abu Dhabi next weekend, as I say, it's all level pegging. So that is Verstappen in the red, first up this morning in the performance rankings. Tuchel's Chelsea are in the red here as well, Ger. This is something that we've kind of flip-flopped on a little bit on the show over the last little while. I think you were knock on Chelsea a month ago, then during the week you're like, hold on, I'm seeing signs of life here.
Yeah.
And at the weekend, David Moyes did it.
When it went 2-1, I was like, I was right to get back on the Chelsea bandwagon, and they were creating chance after chance, and I was like, this is going to be a bit of a hammering here. And then it just wasn't. It definitely felt more self-inflicted at the weekend than it needed to be. Like, that's the first, I would say, crack in the edifice of the keeper that I've seen since he arrived. Because I actually, he's not at Ederson's level just yet, but like, could he get there? It felt like he could. And so that's just a little bit of a step backwards. I'm less, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to make of Chelsea at the moment, because I definitely didn't think that Lukaku was going to be the perfect fit for this group automatically. And, when you make a big signing like that, you feel like, I've got this very expensive car, toy, whatever bad analogy you want to make, and so I need to use it and take it out. And it's like, well, actually, everybody was going quite well before that, so like a brilliant game with loads of top quality goals, and then a howler of a keeper error at one stage. I don't know. It was an excellent game, and I don't want to read too much into it, because these title races are so interesting. Like, if you look at the psychology of what happened, that was the early kickoff on Saturday. And Liverpool couldn't score. They just couldn't score for 93, 94 minutes. And then when Divock Origi does score, it's like, I don't want to say it's fluky, but it goes through the keeper's legs and the defender's legs. You're like, Liverpool were obviously watching the result and feeling the pressure, and it's brilliant. It's really like you forget how enthralling these title races are, because all of a sudden, a game that you expect Liverpool to win, and again, they created a lot of chances, they just can't do it because of the pressure. And then they do it. You're like, ooh, that seems like this massive moment. And they celebrated wildly at the end of it. So it's difficult. Do you put Tuchel's team properly in the red because of this? Or is this just one of those things where actually the pressure's not on them next week now? All of a sudden the pressure's on somebody else. That's how this shifts for the next 2 or 3 months. And that's why we love it.
I think there's definitely going to be limited sympathy out there for any of the excuses that come out of Chelsea is one of the things that the injuries seems to be held up as a reason why Chelsea are faltering at the moment and have had a couple of disappointing results. But really, a team with that budget, the signings that they've made over the last little while to be pointing towards injuries, I think nobody will have any sympathy for that whatsoever. Like even some of the players that they brought off the bench, Lukaku, Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi were the players they brought off. Saul didn't play, Werner didn't play, Ross Barkley, your friend Ross Barkley didn't play. Like, I mean, there is sensational depth in that squad, even with a relatively unfortunate run of injuries. But they put themselves into this position of being vulnerable to the crazy, and there have been a couple of results, and I would even include Manchester United last week as a relatively crazy result. When you look at the statistics, when you look at the dominant team, wasn't it Burnley a few weeks before that, and then they've ended up getting beaten by West Ham. Granted, a bizarre goal to win it, and as you say, we haven't seen too many cracks in Mendy before, but this was certainly one of the first times, and on 2 occasions perhaps he just went away from the norm of being an outstanding goalkeeper, and this sort of stuff happens. But I just think they're vulnerable at the moment at certain points, and they're vulnerable in a way that they shouldn't be vulnerable. Whereas Liverpool now, all of a sudden it's like, is this 2019, 2020 all over again? And I must say, like the Divock Origi story is fascinating, and Jurgen Klopp spoke about him after the game like somebody who was going through a very friendly breakup. He said, I hope Divock Origi finds a manager who properly appreciates him down the line. I really hope that he finds the one for him. And there's almost a sense of regret that, you know, Jota and Firmino and Mane and Salah are just so concrete in their places ahead of him that he will never break into that top 4 strikers unless injuries fall upon them. And you know what? He gave him his due afterwards, and he's come up with so many amazing moments for that club.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting too. They just got to make sure they pay Mo Salah, right? Like, if they don't pay Mo Salah leaves, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, Divock, we always loved you. I mean, I don't know where you got the idea that we thought that you were 5th choice, 5th and 5. No. So I don't look. It's funny when he talks like that after the game, but surely somebody in Origi's orbit is like, you could make loads more money somewhere else being the number 1 guy. You could probably score 15 to 25 goals a season in the right setup, at least 15. You know, is he as good as Dominic Calvert-Lewin? I'm not sure, but like, could he be one of those strikers that everybody talks about? He's still only, 25, 26? There's another 8 years of him considering himself to be at his peak. I don't know. It's just dangerous when you start telling people that, like, we love you, but somebody might love you more.
Yeah, his agent could do a pretty good job. Maybe I guess that's probably one of a bit of a testament to Klopp, isn't it? That somebody can come off the bench and be so content with that impact sub role and score loads of goals. And Klopp said he's one of the best finishers he's ever worked with, and still doesn't get enough game time. But maybe after Jota's miss on Saturday, maybe Origi sniffing around for a starting spot the next day, because that was pretty incredible, and he did get hooked, I guess. That is the red, I guess, unless you've got anything more to add. Go for it.
The Wolves player did save it with his balls, right? Are we confirming that? Was it definitely? It looked. They didn't linger on it too much on the TV, but it was like, yeah, that is good quality, top quality defending right there. And
Conor Cody did run for a good few seconds afterwards, just kind of down in his hunkers almost. He'd shrunk by 2 feet as he was crouched over trying to sprint back and get back into the defensive line. I thought he just got winded personally. I'm not 100% sure though.
Right.
But that was an absolutely extraordinary miss. We were going to touch back on that with Mark Lawrenson a little bit later on, and we will also be touching on Manchester United, who are sort of in the amber, Ger. We're not putting Manchester United in the amber. We're putting Manchester United predictions in the Amber, because it's pretty hard to call where this thing is going at the moment, or at least a week ago people who thought they knew what was going to happen maybe already showing signs of cracks in those predictions.
Very interesting team selection, wasn't it? I thought that these next 3 or 4 team selections are going to be very interesting to see how much game time he gives people, who he's trying to check out, who he's not interested in checking out, and how much rope he gives certain players to, all right, that was your chance, we gave you your opportunity, you didn't perform. And to be doing that while you're winning games, that's going to feel good for Rangnick. I mean, I don't like to blow my own trumpet on this, unless, of course, it's after the crappy quiz, which all bets are off. But on Friday, on our new weekend kickoff show with Sky, I was saying, I think Fred might be the big winner here. And even last week, in the middle of the game, I was like tweeting, is Fred good now? But the realization that like Fred's actually not a central defensive midfielder, that he was bought as a forward or a forward playing midfielder. Like if he is setting the press, if it's his job to be the one who is the kind of quarterback for the press, he can do that job, right? That's actually a job that he's very good at. Now, remember the chip that he tried to score? What game was that?
I can't remember.
Chelsea? Was it the Chelsea game? And he was getting daggers from Ronaldo, and they're like, this is a sign of how bad he is. But actually, it was fairly audacious. And he was trying something that was a little bit different, and he had the confidence to take it on himself. It didn't work out, but like you want your players to be confident. So look, I mean, how is this going to work out again? The evidence is very, very early, but it suggests that it didn't seem to miss Michael Carrick's coaching or his presence generally. And I don't know. It's like Van de Beek's on the bench. What's going to happen with Rashford? What's going to happen with Greenwood? Are we sure 100% that Rangnick is going to be so emotionally involved in getting players through from the academy? Or is he like, well, that's 15 million and that's 35 million. Give me the money and I'm going to spend that on 2 kids from the Leipzig Academy or from Poland or wherever.
Yeah, like, I mean, it was interesting listening to Rangnick afterwards, giving a pretty open breakdown of why he went with the 4-2-2-2 and talking about the thought process behind that. Obviously, some cliched, simple stuff like not wanting to change the team around too much since Arsenal, but he said, like, he went with Ronaldo, Rashford in attack, Sancho and Fernandes in the 2-10 positions, and then we need enough space with Bruno and Jadon for our full-backs to play forward in the wing, and they almost played like wing-backs. And I mean, I think Tellez and Dallo was a phrase that was actually trending on Twitter yesterday. Did extremely well offensively, he said. That's why I played the 4-2-2-2. I'm a big fan. The most challenging, demanding positions in that formation are the 2-10s. And that's interesting that he refers to Sancho and Fernandes' positions as the 2 most challenging positions. And I don't know, there's always this thing thrown around when a team is doing poorly, or perhaps when their press isn't looking too good, that the players aren't up to the level of effort that's required. And I think over the next little while that's going to be proved to be a bit of a nonsense, as we see Sancho and Fernandes perhaps fit in pretty well to this and fit in well into a system that will require a lot of effort. And then of course it'll come down to Ronaldo, and Rangnick praised Ronaldo after the game for his willingness to carry out the high pressing style. What Ronaldo did against the ball, chapeau, said Ralf Rangnick, so that the highest possible compliment to him. A couple of really interesting ones, like United won possession in the final third on 12 occasions, more than in any other game this season, so immediately statistically you're seeing an uptick in there. And the other one, this is from James Ducker's analysis piece in the Telegraph. This was United's first clean sheet at Old Trafford in any competition for 235 days, even despite the weather getting in the way of an extra training session this week. It seems that he's had an immediate impact, or maybe the players are just happy with the new fresh voice and have a bit of a pep in the step as a result.
Yeah, and we've been hearing Daniel Harris in particular talk about Anthony Elanga on the show over the last 18 months, quite significant amounts. And my first game, I'm going to put him in there. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Like that's the whole squad is suddenly on fire in every training session going, well, I've got a chance here. The new guy might not be like the old guy who had his clear mind made up and had like everybody who's been around the place for the last 2 decades telling him stuff, whereas actually, no, you're going to get a chance. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens. And on the basis of his press conference and his first performance, give me your overreaction Monday take here.
I mean, things are going in the upward trajectory. Manchester United an absolute lock for top 4. Like that's your, and that's not even an overreaction, it feels, at this point. given the mood music. Like we're going to have John in a little bit later on. I'd be keen to get his take on where Spurs are actually going to end up this season, because that's the real wild card here, isn't it? That it seems that Manchester United, they will look after their own end of the bargain, and they will come pretty close to the top four. Now, I mean, maybe West Ham keep on winning, maybe West Ham keep on knocking out the big guns, and maybe that's a true wild card. But I think really, as the season goes on, United and Spurs, that cream will sort of rise. But I think Spurs are a problem maybe for Manchester United, and I don't think it'll be overly straightforward. But if you ask me to overreact and say what's going to happen, I think Manchester United are going to take that top four spot.
Right. Villa only 8 points behind West Ham. Just want to point that out.
We were saying that a couple of weeks ago that Villa finishing in the top half would be an extraordinary result, because given their really good season last season, they didn't even finish in the top 10. Now I know they tailed off at the end of the year, but I think there was a general sense out there that if Gerrard could match what Dean Smith did last season, that would be an exceptionally good season for Gerrard.
I've changed my mind. I want top four. That's it. Top four or bust. What's the point? Got to be a winner. Winning mentality on. That's what he wants.
Like, I mean, the other thing we need to mention here is when it comes to the reason why we put Manchester United predictions in the amber is that one of the bad predictions that people had was that Brendan Rodgers was going to become Manchester United manager in the summer.
Yeah, not going to happen anymore. Like, you can't be in charge of a team like Leicester and continuously concede the same goal again and again and again and again and again, because they've just come through a period where there was a manager who couldn't identify what the problems were and change them. And so Leicester City keep conceding goals from set pieces. Villa ripped them apart from set pieces again yesterday, and Villa leapfrogged them. Leicester are now 11. Like, they've had one of those seasons where they're playing great. They're getting loads of kudos. Their manager could be the new manager of Manchester United. He's not going to be the manager of Manchester United. That's gone. That ship has sailed. He needed, while all this was happening, he needed to put together a run of 4 or 5 victories in a row. The team to be really aggressive, and him just be like, no, I'm going about my business here. I don't know what you're talking about. But whatever has happened, maybe the players have subconsciously stopped playing at the same level they were at. But I think that he's out of the running. That's my prediction is, Brendan Rodgers' time coming at Old Trafford anytime soon.
It's interesting. Like, I did feel there was even a level of conversation around Brendan Rodgers that he was an unrealistic target for some clubs. I'm not really saying Manchester United, but maybe when the Tottenham job came up, there was perhaps a tone that Rodgers wouldn't leave Leicester for Tottenham. There was that feeling that the project is too good at Leicester.
Yeah.
Like, it does seem that things have changed really quickly. Like, I mean, like the last time he was asked about the job, he's saying stuff like it's really disrespectful to even ask the question. Like, has the peak come and gone at Leicester? Was his opportunity to get back to one of the top clubs? Was that actually last summer after they won the FA Cup? Did he get too wrapped up in the emotion of that? I wonder.
Well, I don't think his time at Leicester is going to come to a failure because he was somewhat distracted or whatever happened over the last while. Like, I think he can still turn around at Leicester. It's just that window for when the job selection is happening. It's happening at the moment. They're having these conversations, and you compare and contrast with Rangnick, what's happened, and over the next couple of months, right? Like, let's not overreact totally in our overreaction section here, but I don't know. Like, the other thing is Conte has walked in and looked like an adult, and Spurs seem like a club who are unified and making the effort. I'd be interested to see the change in stats from them. Are they all suddenly running more? Now, Grant, it's Norwich. We didn't talk about this, but Andrew Omobamidele started, Adam Meada started. They got beaten 3-0. It's not great experience for them, but at the same time, they're getting some game time. So Nathan Collins played the full game, back-to-back again.
Yeah. Not
a bad weekend for the Irish.
No, absolutely not. So we'll come back to that, as I say, with Mark Lawrenson in just a few moments. He'll be with us at around 8:10 this morning. We'll get into the good, a couple of things to get stuck into here. The club GAA, first of all. I'm not sure what everybody at home was watching, but get in touch with any good stories from the weekend. For me, it was looking at Kilmacud. It was looking at the Kerry final. I mean, just to quickly mention Kilmacud, first of all, I know he's been spoken about quite a bit, but I'm not sure, is there still a level of underappreciation for Paul Mannion? Maybe not. Maybe there's an absolute appreciation. But if you're judging things in the context of pre-2019, I still feel that maybe we didn't quite realise how gifted this guy was and how possibly generational a talent he was until 2019, and he's obviously showing that this year throughout the season with Kilmacud. And it's just the range of his kicking. It's the long range bombs from Paul Mannion. I think it was 5-4 from play yesterday, and that was such a feature of him in the Dublin shirt as well, that when the story comes to be written about Dublin, yes, it will come down to a very calm, collected, a very practical way of taking your scoring from the scoring zone, and yet you had this corner forward who was able to ping the ball over the bar from any angle, and Jim Gavin sort of gave him that allowance, that if somebody was going to ping the ball over from outside the scoring zone, it was either going to be Diarmuid Connolly in the early Jim Gavin years or Paul Mannion in the late Jim Gavin years. And as a point taker, as a sharpshooter from anywhere in the forward line, he'll have to go down as one of the greatest. And the conversation has been had plenty of times about whether or not Dublin could use him next year. There's no question that they could, but I'm not sure he will go back, because I'd say he's enjoying life right now. He's getting this competitive edge and they're going pretty well.
Yeah. There's a time that we revisited some of our hot takes about the Dubs and how the production line was going to keep belching out lads like that, because maybe we got that wrong. I know my friends who are proper Dublin football people were like, the next generation is nowhere near as good as this generation. Like, stop banging on about how we're going to have a constant supply of top quality players who are just ready, waiting to go. Because it turns out they don't. Like, they haven't been able to replace fully all of the players that they had, and their depth has now reached a point where, like, next season are any of, now that Dublin have been beaten by a Mayo side who were subsequently beaten, are people really going to fear them next year? You know, an angry Dublin, it's like, well, how angry can they be with it? Like, what's the difference going to be between them and last year and this year? I'm not quite sure.
I think questioning how angry Dublin are going to be is a very, very dangerous thing. Like, I have them right.
Well, that's just because you're from Kerry and you're terrified of it.
Right in at the top of the pile again next year. Like, if they get Mannion back, I think it's absolutely it changes the face of next year completely. The other thing to mention then from yesterday, it's on a lot of the back pages. Stars aligned for Stacks is the Independent, and Star Reborn is the Irish Examiner. It's Kieran Donaghy celebrating as Austin Stacks went level with Dr. Crokes at the top of the county champions honours roll. Like, it's a double this year for Austin Stacks. They won 3 in a row in the club championship. This was the county championship to beat Kearns O'Rahilly's yesterday, the first time since the 60s that two Tralee teams took part in the county final. It was a bit of a disaster for O'Rahilly's, to be quite honest with you. I know the game wasn't on TV. I was watching on the stream myself. Gavin O'Brien, one of their better players, gets injured before the game even starts. I think he does his hamstring in the warm-up, and then within 5 minutes David Moran gets injured, and from that point it's curtains almost for Rahleys. And as the game progresses, I mean, it's Austin Stacks who hold on to a 3-point lead and a comfortable enough 3-point lead as things turn out. They took out 3 divisional teams on the way to this win. It was a phenomenal season for them, and I'd say a pretty sweet one to get one over their Tralee rivals in the end. So that is pretty much the GAA from yesterday. Just quickly then to mention,
now Stacks are playing in the Nations League, right? They're or is it the Euros?
It is both. They're whatever you want to call it. The confusing part is done, Ger. I mean, the Nations League is over. The format is over. It's into Munster now with Stacks.
I mean, Donaghy is a phenomenon. Like, he's been a phenomenon for a long, long time. But to be still at the very end, winning, like being involved in the thing that wins the match or prevents the game from going to extra time, is phenomenal. Like, I think we underappreciate Donaghy. You know, if you're talking about Mannion a little bit earlier on, I think that, like, the longevity in two sports, that, like, how meaningful his ability to talk to his teammates and to, I don't know, I think Armagh are very lucky to have him involved.
Yeah, for sure. I think he retired a year too soon, maybe even 2 years too soon for Kerry. I think if he was there in 2019, things could have been a little bit different. It's going to be interesting. Like, there was talk. I'm not sure how real this was. This is definitely me regurgitating like WhatsApp talk or like complete idle chat in the pub here. But there was like talk a couple of weeks ago that even if Stacks had won the game, that David Moran would potentially be Kerry captain next year, because there just isn't enough options in Austin Stacks county-wise to actually have a captain. And I think that will change over the next little while. I think they've been so impressive. They've had a brilliant system. They've got a great manager, great coaching, great defensive system. But there have been some individual players for this team who look outstanding. And now putting a first-year player in as captain might be a little bit of a stretch. But there's a guy, Joe O'Connor, who plays in midfield, who's been involved with Kerry in the past, played last year. He's going to have a bigger part next year. And Kerry might have found their new full back as well. There's a 21-year-old kid, Dylan Casey. He was given the captaincy for Austin Stacks this year. So he's clearly got a real level of maturity, like ahead of Donaghy, ahead of some of the older players, been given that captaincy, played alongside David Clifford in that minor team, and was outstanding all throughout the championship. Destroyed his man, every single person he came up against, and chipped in on the attacking side of things as well. Possibly one to watch out for next year in Jack O'Connor's team. So that's the GAA wrapped up. Just very quickly, just to mention the FA Cup final at the weekend, Chelsea 3, Arsenal 0 on TV. Plenty of people saw this in a busy day of sport yesterday. I think the moment that everybody caught their eye was the chip from Sam Kerr, an absolutely incredible finish. And I guess Emma Hayes talking in the aftermath of the game, out of this world, I think she described Sam Kerr and Frank Kirby, the third women's team to secure a domestic treble with that win yesterday. And it's not as if they're up against nobody. This is a real rivalry, this Arsenal-Chelsea thing, and Arsenal completely outclassed yesterday.
Yeah, and like we've heard Katie McCabe talk in the past about the importance of watching, in her instance, Emma Byrne playing in a match and thinking, I could do that. So the representation that game was on terrestrial UK TV, which obviously was carried in most people's homes here as well, and the fact that we did have an Irish woman playing in the game, albeit on the losing side and getting hammered. It's going to be very interesting to see. The unstoppable juggernaut of momentum behind the women's game is there for all to see at this point. And what a finish! Like what a finish! Because that stage Arsenal are pushing everybody forward, and actually I think Katie McCabe gets caught a little bit. One of her teammates gets caught in possession. She's slightly out of position. The ball gets pinged in behind her. And it's just one of those finishes that you're like, anybody who watches that game live as a kid is going to be out in the back garden practicing that, trying to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Right, it is 10 minutes past 8 on this Monday morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. That is it for this morning's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
All right, it is 10 past 8. We've got a packed show still to come on OTB AM, but we're talking football with Mark Lawrenson next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
It's one thing in Mayo there or in Kildare and Laois as well, they're generally lads all from the same background. Arsenal here is pretty much like the United Nations. There's 7 or 8 different languages spoken in the dressing room. There's 15 or 20 nationalities across the team. I think off the squad now, from when I arrived in 2015, I believe there's 3 players. When you come back to knowledge and expertise end of it, I think you're spot on, Paddy. But I think it's the old saying that no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for Quick Start Insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. 12 minutes past 8 on this Monday morning. It is time to look back on the weekend's Premier League action. Mark Lawrenson is with us. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's start with Manchester United, the Rangnick revolution. Did we see the first signs of it yesterday?
Yeah, I think it's a really good appointment, and it was so obvious that under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer they didn't have an identification the way they were playing Manchester United at all. It was kind of get out there and sort it out between yourselves, and even at the highest level, which they're at, you need some direct direction, and I think he'll give it to them. They sort of played a 4-2-2-2 yesterday, kept a clean sheet, won the game, which also obviously helps Rangnick because they're on the training ground. Players are more inclined to listen when you're winning. So I think it's a sensible appointment as well, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets extended.
Is it as simple a thing as the players providing a better body language, showing more energy that can transform, say, a team without the ball? Because I guess there's 2 elements to that. Is it how they're being instructed? Is it the actual tactical approach to pressing, or is it the actual application from the players? And it seems that things have changed, or things were so apparent so quickly yesterday after one training session, that there must be a little bit of both to this story.
Yeah, no, there is, but it just shows you that players, even today's players. They want direction, you know. And the thing about football nowadays, especially in the Premier League, that, you know, you can bring players in and show them what they've been doing in games, you know, what's good and what's bad and all those kind of things. I mean, they send them DVDs to look at and everything. And it would just appear that, nothing against Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but he was, you know, this is the way I want to play. You know, we're all good players. It's a bit like, it felt like it was a bit Manchester United of old, where they just went out and played. But obviously they didn't, because they were sort of 4-4-2 generally. But within that, they had lots of license. And I think nowadays with players, they want to be told absolutely everything, you know, where they should be when they're attacking, where they should be when they're defending, all those kind of things. And if you think about it, it's really, really good then, because, you know, the manager will say, oh, actually, I told you to be X and you're not being X. So, you know, sort yourself out and get in there. And I think it's very easy, really. But as I say, they just, you know, every time Manchester United play, you couldn't actually decide how they were playing, as in formation or tactically.
He had a bit of a laugh afterwards about Fred scoring off his right foot. Like, I mean, maybe he's like getting in on the joke that everybody was in on, that Fred is actually a good footballer, but it's not really a joke, is it, Mark? This guy is actually a talented footballer who is potentially underutilised or utilised in the wrong way for the last few years. He seems to be poised to have a bit of a breakout few months.
Well, that'll be it, because I mean, that, you know, straight away he'll get the confidence. I think they all will as a team. Obviously, keeping a clean sheet is important, but he's not suddenly become a bad player, Fred. He's one, obviously, who needs channeling. And he must look at Rangnick and think, yeah, you're the man for me. So it remains to be seen. Obviously, it's only one game, and it's a good start. As I say, keep saying about especially the clean sheet, because they've been so porous in games, as everybody knows. But he's got something to build on, most definitely. And I just think we'll see a different Manchester United now. And I'm pretty sure they'll finish fourth, even at this stage, just before Christmas.
Yeah, we were having that chat a little bit earlier on about who's actually going to be the threat to them. And I guess when it comes back to the formation that you mentioned there, the 4-2-2-2, like Tellez and Dallo, I mean, is it their positions to lose at this point when it comes to the wing backs, as Rangnick described them yesterday?
Yeah, I would say so, because he's chucked them in, hasn't he? He's had a look and seen what way they've been playing, and he'll have viewed many of the much of the footage from the last 3 months or so, and he's just gone, okay, I'll start with those two, and it's your position to lose. So he's, you know, all these teams are big teams. Competition for places just spurs people on, and when you've suddenly got a new manager, and actually you as a player think he's got lots of confidence in you, it makes a heck of a difference.
Can I just tease that out a little bit, Mark? There's obviously the difference between the new manager bounce, which, you know, we see a lot of managers get, but there's then also the difference in a group of players suddenly being told what is expected of them. So are we going to see both from Rangnick, that actually we had this very talented squad who were kind of given not very much by way of instruction, go out and express yourselves, get the eye of the tiger, go and be Man United, it's in your DNA, versus what you were saying, you're going to stand in this position and it's going to create space for somebody else. And then, you know, there's two aspects.
Yeah, I'm absolutely both. I think, you know, I mean, we're not the brightest of people generally as you know, footballers. So you always want direction, always, and obviously you want your manager to believe in you as well. But it's really, really simple when you think about it. He's obviously come on the training ground and he's gone, okay, you know, this is the way we're going to play. And he's only, has he had a session, a day and a half, possibly? But he's obviously got the message across. And I know it was only Crystal Palace and all that kind of stuff, but he's got the message across that I think they'll just kick on. And there'll be, you know, you walking out into Carrington this morning to that training ground, there'll be a completely different sort of aura about the whole place. And I would think the players are looking forward to playing for him.
I suppose the other thing we find out now is how good the players really are. Like, you know, are they the fourth or fifth best squad, or are they actually good enough next season with maybe one or two additions to compete at the very top level? I'm not sure they're at that level yet, are they?
No, they're not at that level yet, because they've also been terribly inconsistent, haven't they? So, but, you know, look, it's like anything. A new manager comes in, and if he does well, which we think he will do, and he'll start to win loads of games, then obviously, you know, he'll start to buy players, and he'll buy players to fit the system. I think that's the important thing from his point of view. And because when you look at the managers they've had previously, the last 3 or 4, they would say relatively unsuccessful. And I think you'll just get this kind of different mechanics in the way that they play football. But also, I think he'd be very aware as well that, I know they always say Man United have got to play a certain way. Well, I think the thing with that is Manchester United need to win every game, like Liverpool, Manchester City and Chelsea. And I think he'll bring that. I really seriously will. So I don't think they'll be pushing this year in terms of the top 3. But next year or next season, I think they'll be completely different.
My last one on this, right? The manager was kind of, or the process was criticised immediately. And I said, another interim manager, what are they doing? But actually, Rangnick managed to nip that in the bud when he said, well, who knows, maybe I'll recommend myself for the job. Because there was some fear that maybe he'd be a bit of a lame duck and that the players might start playing for a move away. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this guy's sticking around. I can't really phone it in.
Well, you only need to listen to the likes of Klopp and other people who've either been coaching with him, played for him, all those kind of things. I mean, Klopp said straight away, beware. The Premier League needs to beware because he's in, and he's I think the fact straight away he didn't dawdle about it. Manchester United, crikey, biggest team in the world. I bet those were his words, not mine. So why wouldn't you buy into that? No, I think it'll be good for Manchester United. It's just taken an awful long time to actually get there. But as you know, I mean, in terms of the recruitment, they've been very, very average. They've just bought players who they think, oh yeah, let's go buy him. And sometimes you look at the players they bought and you thought, well, where are they going to fit into the system? And they basically didn't. You won't get that with this guy. He'll be very methodical because that's the way the Germans are, aren't they? Not being stereotypical. So I think that's the way they are.
He sounds like the type of guy who should be trusted with a few transfer windows.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? And he's been all over the place in terms of managing and stuff and coaching. So he's seen every sort of tactical manoeuvre you could possibly ask about. I think one of the best things will be, and you can get it from the calmness straight away, that he'll be able to deal with players, and he probably won't even scream and shout apart from the odd occasion when you really need to. But I think very much he seems to me as a manager will just sit people down and go, look, this is what we're looking for, and I don't think he'll make any enemies there. So I think the squad will be a happy one. Although of course, if players all of a sudden who had started under Ollie are not starting under Rangnick, then that's a little bit different. But he'll even deal with that. And go back to Klopp again, and that's what he does. I mean, how he keeps that squad happy, I've absolutely no idea. I mean, look at Origi on Saturday. He starts a game, he comes on and wins a game for them, and he seems happy as Larry.
Yeah, it's incredible man management, like we were making that point earlier on.
Well, I think Rangnick's got that. Yeah. I think he really has got that, and I think he's got this calmness about him as well.
Just one last thing on Manchester United then. Are you still looking at Lindelof and Maguire, the starting partnership, yesterday and saying that's a disaster waiting to happen? Or did you see, granted it's only one game, did you see enough changes yesterday that they'll get the required protection for them to not be such a liability as a central defensive partnership?
Well, they've had loads of protection, haven't they? Because Manchester United, I mean, Carrick took over very briefly. He played 3 holding midfield players in front of them. The back 4. I just think they made lots of mistakes. The 2 fullbacks, Wan-Bissaka and who was the left back? His name escapes me now. Who didn't play on at the weekend?
Sure.
Sorry, sure, of course it is. They've really, really struggled. And they've struggled defensively. They might be fine going forward, but look, you're a defender. You've got to defend. And I think it was a little bit of a case of just sitting people down and going, you know what? You're not a unit. The 4 of you are just not a unit. Sometimes it was 5. And ages ago when I came on one of your programmes and they signed Varane, I just said to you, I said, look, the thing about that is he gets injured an awful lot of times. He's a really, really good player. So they have to make a decision. But again, Lindelof and Shaw, I think they will improve. I think the whole team will improve. Whether they're good enough at the very top, at the elite level, as a pair, remains to be seen.
Let's move on to some of Saturday's action then. West Ham beating Chelsea 3-2 was an extraordinary game. I think it does seem reasonable for Chelsea to point to maybe some of the injuries in midfield for a reason why they haven't been amazing over the last little while. But at the same time, they've spent an incredible amount of money, and I don't think anybody will have one iota of sympathy for that argument at the moment. So is that why things have gone on a little bit of a dip for Thomas Tuchel over the last little while, or is there a greater malaise here?
Well, no, I don't think there's a greater malaise, but it happens to all teams. They have a little bit of a downtime, if you will. And I mean, go back to Liverpool, drawing at home to Brighton, losing, drawing away to Brentford, losing at West Ham as well. You don't suddenly become a bad side. I looked at them. I mean, Lukaku came on, didn't he, eventually? And you're looking at him and you're kind of saying, well, if he can come on, why doesn't he start him? And I know you're on about the midfield players and stuff, but they've got two players for every single position. They just had a really good run, and now they're having a little bit of a dip, but they'll come back, and Lukaku will start scoring. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I still think they're arguably, for me, that they're the favourites to win, because they will get stronger. For sure. The West Ham side of things obviously is one of the stories. Like, I mean, I think we had... The goalkeeper's not been good, has he? His decision making at the moment is not good, to say the least. I mean, he was really, really fortunate against Watford, wasn't he? But he's just started to make mistakes. But that's a position which I think is the most difficult position in football, goalkeeper, because when to come and when not to come, and all those kind of things in a kind of split second is very, very difficult. And also, he looks to me like he's a little bit bored, Mendy, and he wants to join in. Which I remember a certain person we used to play with who was a bit like that. But he'll get it. He'll get it eventually.
Feel free to throw him under the bus, whoever that is.
Hey, Brucey. Yeah. But I was with him yesterday. But listen, he turned out to be a top goalkeeper. He was thrown in only at Liverpool because Ray Clements left. They didn't have a goalkeeper, and they threw him in straight away. And normally in those kind of years, you'd have a year or 18 months in the reserves just to learn, you're not just your trade, but also in terms of how you play with the rest of the players. But he turned out to be a top goalie, Brucey, but just a complete nutter.
The other thing is that, like, we were speaking to you a few weeks ago, I think it was, Mark, and you weren't invested in this idea that West Ham are going to get top four. I think it's fair enough when you look at United and possibly Spurs on their rise over the next little while. But what is the sustainable ceiling for this West Ham team?
I would think top six sort of for West Ham. I mean, he very much seems to pick the same team every week, Moisey, as much as he can. He trusts his players. I've told you before that they work unbelievably hard. They're a great bunch, etc. But you just worry about Antonio getting his hamstring, his normal hamstring, etc. And I mean, the interesting thing will be what he does in January, because if he knocks on the door of the two owners and says he wants this and whatever, he'll probably get it. I would think. Obviously, he's trying to get Lingard. But then won't everybody try and get Lingard, because at the end of the season he's free, and I don't know what you'd have to pay for him in January, but I think he'd try and get him most definitely, and maybe a couple of others, and then I think only then could they possibly sustain the fact of getting anywhere close to the top four for me.
Is there ever any danger that Moyes gets picked up again by a bigger club, Mark? Because it does seem that the reputation has been well and truly fixed at this point, and it's just getting enhanced as they get more and more of these wins.
But if you look at that realistically, where does he go? What top club? Fair. I mean, he says all the time that the owners have been great with him. Whatever he's asked for and they've promised, he gets. He loves it, and so he loves the players. He just loves working with players day in, day out. And I just think that the number of games ultimately that they'll play West Ham with playing in Europe and stuff, they'll just get one or two more injuries. And as we know, the squad isn't that deep at the moment. But maybe in January it completely changes.
Can we talk about Origi, because you mentioned him a little bit earlier on, and what's going on? Like, why is he still there? Why is he still able to contribute? And why is he not just decided, right, I'm good enough to be the main man somewhere?
Well, maybe just one of those guys who you get he's on really good money, great, he's fit, doesn't get injured because he hardly ever plays. Maybe he just loves the fact that, and he's not bothered. I tell you who's like that, Matip. Joel Matip, his parents are extremely well educated and everything. And the lads tell me that he's not particularly a football fan or, mad on football, and he just goes out and plays it because he can. So you do get players like that. And the thing with Origi, he's got like celebrity status there, isn't he? Because the number of games he's come on and changed again by scoring. But whenever he starts, I tell you, it's a bit like David Fairclough. Remember Super Sub? And David Fairclough would come on and score for fun. When he started games, it was never quite the same. It was though he just needed that last 20 minutes, half an hour where teams were tiring a little bit because he was rapid. He was very, very quick. He just needed that, and that was like the confidence to go on there and score a goal. And Origi's probably a bit of a modern-day version of him.
And is it Klopp's greatest triumph? I mean, apart from winning the Champions League and the league after a long drought, but to keep players like him happy and to keep them contributing, that to me seems the most difficult part of this, because giant egos, loads of money, jealousy, all that kind of stuff that like exists in every workplace, but it's just magnified when you're playing for Liverpool. And
well, the first thing is he'll be on big money, won't he? Which is good luck to him. So that'll make him happy. He obviously likes living on Merseyside, and as I say, he's just that way. I mean, Klopp. I remember one of the players, I can't remember who it was now, and Benteke, when Klopp had only been there a few weeks, and I think Benteke eventually got moved on. And Benteke said something that really struck me about Klopp, and he said, "He's your friend." He said, "But he's not your best friend." And I thought that was a really, really kind of good statement. And if you see him around the training ground, he's always arm around players, talking to players, all that kind of thing. And I think he's very, very clever at kind of diffusing, little lads who, not little lads, but guys who are not happy. And I think in the end, it's one of those, isn't it? Everyone knows about the fact, players used to go in the manager's office and say, "I'm going to go have a row with him." And then they'd come out and say, "He's told me I'm absolutely brilliant and I'm getting a rise and doing whatever," but he's still not in the team. And it's a bit of bluff, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it's working.
Is there a bang of 2019-20 off this Liverpool team? Late winners now starting to happen?
Yeah, possibly. But I mean, all the top teams should score late winners, shouldn't they? Because what happens is eventually against teams, you just wear them out. And defensively, the teams you play against just lack a bit of concentration, one mistake, and we've seen it loads and loads of times. And of course, the problem is that they've scored so many goals in so many games, as everybody's seen, that all of a sudden when you have a really tight game and it's a 1-0 at Wolves, it's like, oh, but listen, you only get 3 points no matter how many goals you score if the opposition don't score. So it won't bother Klopp. And I think he'll quite like the fact that they kept going. And, for a team that's obviously so good going forward and defensive now sorted out all the problems. I mean, I bet they were cock-a-hoop in that dressing room when they all came in. Rather than, beat someone at home 4-0, 5-0, all that kind of stuff. I bet on Saturday when they came in at 5 o'clock, I bet it was all high-fived and all that kind of stuff, because it was very, very difficult because Wolves played extremely well and stopped them. But in the end, they found a way to do it, and that's what you've got to do.
Yeah, the touchline celebrations were wild. Klopp was like hugging whoever was closest to him and shaking them for all they were worth. Can I ask you, Mark, about the situation at Everton? Obviously, a dire performance in the derby, the camera cutting to Bill Kenwright sitting there, and 2 down from him was Marcel Brands. Marcel Brands won't be there anymore. It's going to be, it's the Rafa show. So do you think it was a power struggle? Is that how that works? Rafa says, "This guy set me up to fail. I need to be in charge of everything."
Well, the thing about that is, but I mean, they only spent 1.7 million, didn't they, because of financial fair play. So, and Rafa knew that. And, all the supporters know that. I really don't know what they're expecting. So, I think Rafa will be fine, and I think they'll back him. I don't know how long the financial fair play thing actually lasts for. Can he go out in January and spend money? I would imagine and assume that he probably can. And that's, I think, then you've got to look at him and see what his team is. I mean, all the Liverpool fans were calling him Agent Benitez, weren't they? after the game on Wednesday night. So look, he's a good manager. It's just one of those, isn't it? It's should you go and manage your rivals when you manage them originally team? So I think it's just the way that football is. But now probably with him, he's if you got rid of Brands, he's now thinking, right, I'm in control of this. So good luck to him. Bill Kenwright's a good guy, He's a proper Evertonian. And he just wants the best for the team. Basically, I don't know about the owner. I don't even know if he goes to the games, but Bill Kenwright's still a very powerful voice at that club.
And this is good news for Rafa in the long run, then, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think he'll back him. I mean, I know him quite well, Bill Kenwright, only because when Moisey was there, as you know, he's my mate. I was with him on several occasions, and he understands football, and I think he understands people. Generally, he's done a really, really good job. So I think he'll just hopefully let Benitez get on with it, basically. As long as he don't improve too much, it'll be fine.
Fair enough. And what about Steven Gerrard up against Brendan Rodgers? That was plenty of off-field narrative. It turned out that the on-field narrative was that Leicester aren't very good at defending set pieces.
Yeah, and they've had a sluggish start, haven't they? Which teams always will have that. They've got a few injuries, but it just shows you with I mean, Dean Smith didn't really do a lot wrong at Villa. If that fifth game, where he got the 50 seat, if he'd won it, I bet he'd still be in a job. But it just shows you somebody else comes in, different voice, different ideas, same players. What are they? 9 points from 12. So. And I think Stephen's quite cutting edge. He has a defensive coach. He has, I can't remember the name of the guy who does most of the coaching. It's not Stephen, although obviously he oversees everything. And apparently, this guy's really, really good. And all of a sudden, he's getting a tune out of them, isn't he?
You think he's going to be good in the long run?
Well, you just never ever know. But I would think so. I mean, with the other thing where he's going to be fortunate at Aston Villa is Christian Perslow was at Liverpool when Stephen was there. So they already had a relationship. So if it'd been, where Dean Smith got into this, played for, lost for, whatever, I think Stephen would be all right because he would get the serious backing of Christian Perslow. So he's always going to have a chance. But I think players will relate to him as well. And I'll tell you now, he's probably the best player on the training ground. And that sometimes is really, really good because the players look at him and think, crikey, how good is he? So, and he's setting the standards for them.
Mark Lawrenson, great stuff. Thanks a million for being with us this morning.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Thanks a million. It is 8:36 on this Monday morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Right, it is time for the sports pages. And we will start this morning with OTBSports.com. Keith Tracy talking about Manchester City. At City, Grealish is just another fish in the pond. Gerrard talking about another Aston Villa win. We've got a lot to work on, but I'm happy so far. And the Ralf Rangnick transformation, slowly implementing his new style, is the verdict from yesterday as well. Then Rangnick himself saying, I was positively surprised. And then Chelsea complete domestic treble as they beat Arsenal in FA Cup final. So that is OTBSports.com this morning. The newspapers, the front page of the Irish Examiner, Star Reborn is the headline. Donaghy delight as Stacks join Crokes on top of Kerry honour list. He's also there on the front of the Irish Independent Sports section this morning. Stars align for Stacks. Kieran Donaghy, the person is a special man. He's a driving force for us as well. I think that was the manager speaking after the game. We've also got plenty of Fred coverage. Fred lifts Reds in Rangnick opener. We've had a couple of commenters in. Brian Dillon's been in touch to say, fire the lights on the tree, Ger. Also, I'm disappointed if I don't see a Man United St. Nick headline this Christmas, which I think we're probably going to see at some point for sure. The Daily Telegraph goes with that picture from Jeddah yesterday. It is Lewis Hamilton celebrating with Max Verstappen there in the background. Hamilton Fury, a crazy rival, and Rangnick revels in perfect start to Manchester United reign. The back of the Herald, better than I expected, says Ralph, and Dublin's losses are gain, says Brennan, as Mannion stars for Crokes. The back of the London Times, Hamilton slams crazy rival after chaotic win. Max Verstappen 369.5 points to Lewis Hamilton 369.5 points. That is the way things are going into Abu Dhabi next week. The back of the Guardian leads with the same story. Hamilton levels the title race in night of drama. And on the front foot, Rangnick up and running with flying start as United manager. The next one is the Irish Daily Mail. Ralph's hat tip. Praise for Ron as new boss starts with win. And Star points the way for Stacks. Meanwhile, Hamilton blasts Crazy Max in toxic Saudi GP. The back of the Irish Daily Star is a drop of Fred. Brazilian has perfect welcome for new United boss Rangnick. The back of the Mirror is Ralph loves red Fred wine. Rangnick hopes victory vino tastes better than Fergie's after Brazilian's worldie gets new manager off to a flyer at Old Trafford. The back of the Irish Sun then is we're not Ralph bad, it's Ran United for Ronaldo and co. And then finally the Irish Times this morning. Rangnick is delighted with United's front foot display. Fred's goal lifts team to within 3 points of Champions League place.
What's the Saint Nick? Ralph Nick? Saint Ralph Nick? What's the Christmas pun? How do you work one out of that?
Well, like I guess his name is like Rangnick. The second half of the surname is Saint Nick.
Top quality sub editing going on here right now. That's it?
Like I presume so. I'm all for that. I think that he will be on the back pages every second day between now and the end of the season. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but certainly once a week. And
way more. You're right.
Quite quickly, the bottom of the barrel will come into view, and Saint Nick might just be one of the things on the bottom of the barrel. And you know what? I'm okay with it. I think it's an okay headline.
Well, the red Fred wine and the drop of Fred. Did you like that?
Yeah, that was good. Do you like that? I mean, did that do the business for you?
No, red wine. It's a terrible song, really, from a terrible band who, are very closely associated with Manchester United. Not for me, pal. Not having it.
John Duggan is here to, I guess, criticise that take, I presume.
Is this UB40?
Yeah, UB40's red wine.
You're not a UB40 fan, Ger?
Wasn't a red wine fan. Sorry, and you're right. In my head, I have actually totally managed to mangle this with Simply Red.
Is this Kelly Cunningham again?
Sorry.
This is Kelly Cunningham, Aha, and Duran Duran mix up. It's like the 80s pop thing again.
It is. Sorry, it was Simply Red that I was trying to, because they are very closely associated. Wasn't it Ferguson's favourite?
Yeah, well, Mick Hucknall's from Manchester, yeah, so that would make sense. Yeah, UB40, a Birmingham band. Because the only reason I know this is because I'm an 80s nerd. So, Red Wine topped the charts in August of 1983.
John, you and I need to give Ger a bit of education on 80s pop culture, 70s, 80s pop culture. We need to fill him in on.
Well, generally, Owen, when you get asked a question, there's generally a bit of silence and tumbleweed, and then you usually go with the old man laughs at cloud or shakes the fist at cloud kind of meme to get yourself out of it.
Well, obviously, what else am I going to do, John? Just sit here and get embarrassed. Come out swinging, John. Good morning to you, by the way.
How are we doing, folks? All good.
We were chatting earlier on about this top four race, and I get this sense that Manchester United are definitely in the box seat right now for this team number four. But there is a white cloud coming from North London, and surely you're feeling quietly confident.
It's amazing when clubs appoint managers, because Spurs have had Everton, Leeds, Brentford and Norwich in the first four games of the Antonio Conte reign. I think Rangnick's spell in charge of Man United is going to be quite soft in terms of the games they're going to be playing. West Ham keep on surprising everybody, don't they? You expect them to falter, and then they win and they beat Chelsea the other day. So Arsenal are in the loop. They play tonight against Everton. It is fascinating. It's a really exciting race. Spurs, the jury's still out. Norwich are more possession than us yesterday. Lucas Moore's goal was stupendous, but Harry Kane has scored one goal this season in the Premier League. I'm just already fascinated by the Rangnick press conferences and listen to them in the technical detail, the tactical discussions, and he really is the anti-Solskjaer for me. Let's hear from him now after yesterday's win over Crystal Palace.
So Diogo and Alex, they both did extremely well offensively. As I said, that was the reason why I decided to play in a 4-2-2-2. And every player, and I'm a big fan of that, could play on his best possible position. I mean, the most challenging, the most demanding positions in that formation are the 2 10s, and But I still think, especially when Palace was in possession of the ball, Jayden and Bruno did well on that, even on those positions. For them, it was a little bit new. Not that new, because it's not that much of a difference if Jayden plays a little bit further outside or inside, but defensively they both did well.
This is the anti-Solskjaer lads.
Explaining his work.
Well, yeah, and the intricacies of the formations and the 4-2-2-2 and Ronaldo having a partner alongside him, and you're having Bruno and Jayden as number 10s, and Victor Lindelof was playing in the midfield at times yesterday. I was listening to Nathan on the commentary, then watched obviously the highlights back. So just fascinating stuff. And now Jordan Ibe could have scored, but a good win for Man United yesterday. And the thing about Ralf Rangnick is he's in a no-lose situation, because say that he doesn't do, maybe they don't get top 4. He's still in a consultancy role, and if they do get top 4 and he does better than expected, he probably gets the job.
Yeah, loads of money. Why are there no English managers coming through who speak like this just yet? Or
it was Graham Potter.
It's just interesting, right? Maybe he's doing a little bit of that. And is there still a suspicion of it though? I wonder, because Brendan Rodgers tries this, right? And his players post-match sometimes talk about that. Like after the Man United game, was it James Maddison who explained exactly what happened in quite technical detail. But listening to Dean Smith in his first Norwich press conference, he was kind of almost embarrassed about the fact that he knew about the stats of his players. Like, I'm a bit of a stats nerd, me. There's still a suspicion of football people knowing maths and analytics, and that group of German managers, and he obviously went through it. Rangnick famously went through this himself, where it's like, it's maybe English football is still just 15, 20 years behind German football when it comes to this.
Yeah, maybe. Eddie Howe and Graham Potter would be seen as, I'd say, progressive types of managers, but yeah, maybe it is the meat and drink kind of approach to describing how your teams play, and that was almost the Solskjaer way though. The Solskjaer way was delivered in sure, look, we're Man United, we're going to go out, we're going to express ourselves, we're going to be individuals, and
it was Roy Keane, Eye of the Tiger, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I read a really fascinating interview with Jonathan Liew and Graham Potter the other day about like how he's come from the 4th tier of Swedish football to now with Brighton, a Premier League team that is plays really good football, and he's just talking about, like, why didn't you just get a striker after Ben White was sold for 50 million to Arsenal? And he just says, well, if I do that, I'll break the whole wage structure of the club. So he's really building something there and playing progressive football. But could you imagine Graham Potter as the England manager? And I probably ties in with your point. I probably couldn't, to be honest, even if he got a Brighton into the top 6 or something. And it's probably still not fitting that stereotype of what an English manager is.
I think maybe Southgate is actually a kind of staging post along the way to it, where he does have those conversations. And somebody recently complaining about the coverage of the English team was like, you don't really understand the tactical decisions that go into making the selection decisions. Like if you think back to the last tournament, every time Southgate made a change, he got hammered. No matter what the change was, it was almost as if, just pick your best 11 players, put them out there. Was what.
Where's Jack Grealish? And we see Jack Grealish now struggling in Manchester City a bit. I think that Southgate, I think Southgate is a stepping stone, because I think Southgate still has got questions to answer, and he wasn't a successful club manager. But the reason why Southgate is doing so well is because he got all these lads to play as a unit and play for the team, and he's a motivator for me.
So then he's in the mould of Solskjaer and Keane, as opposed to in the mould of Rangnick and that school, who are obsessed with the nuances of the positioning of Jadon Sancho or the positioning of Telles. Like, it'll be interesting to see if there is an evolution and if Southgate can get there. But I actually think he's a bit better than that. I think he's trying to be that. But I just think that.
But it also says, Ger, that the club manager is key, is king now. That like international football, well, Jose might get a job at Portugal. He's not going to get a job in a league club again. Roberto Mancini's stock had fallen a little bit. Then he got Italy, and he just showed, as a top club manager, as a Premier League winning manager, how well he could do with Italy. So I do think the international game, like the best manager probably in the world is Tite in Brazil, who was won the Copa Libertadores, and you see how well Brazil did in qualifying. So I do think that, I do think it's a step below, and I think international football is almost like a different kind of vibe, and often it's a lot about motivating the players.
For sure. So, Rangnick, is that where we're starting this morning, John?
Yeah, well, that's where we've been. Lots of other things, like Lucas Moore's goal was absolutely stupendous. Interesting to see the Irish lads play. Ida Ano Bamidele. They got a chance. Stephen Gerrard's Aston Villa. Ger, how soon is the trademark? Is it already? They're already there?
Oh, straight away, wasn't it?
Straight away,
I have yet to hear them be referred to as anything other than Stephen Gerrard's Aston Villa. In the middle of the game, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, like Stephen Gerrard's Aston Villa. Okay. That's interesting. Okay.
3 wins out of 4 for him. Leicester really struggling at set pieces yesterday against Aston Villa, and they're conceding too many goals, as Brendan Rodgers admitted. Patrick Bamford, brilliant celebration, just took off the shirt and just flung it. Didn't care where the shirt went after scoring the 95th minute for Leeds against Brentford. Everton, they've sacked Marcel Brands. They play Arsenal tonight, 8 o'clock start, 16th in the table, Everton. There's going to be fan protests. I think some fans are going to walk out in the 27th minute. 1995 is the last time they won a trophy, so a lot of disquiet at Everton. But Benitez has obviously won one of the key political struggles already at Everton, so Benitez is safe for the moment, and I think he will be safe. Rachel Blackmore, breaking news, has been nominated for the World Sports Star Award at the BBC Sports Personality of the Year Award. So she's in a shortlist of 6 with Saul Canelo Alvarez, Tom Brady, Novak Djokovic, Max Verstappen and Elaine Thompson-Herah. Austin Sachs beating Karen Zarahli is obviously the big story from a Kieran Donaghy perspective. 13-10 yesterday in the club championship in Kerry, the county final there in football. The last 4 in Leinster in the football will be Shelmeliers, Nace, Port Arlington and Kilmacud Crokes. Era Oga of Clare got the better of Lockmore Castellani of Tipperary in Munster to reach the last 4. Mayo champions Knockmore into the Connacht final. They beat Turlestrand by 2 points. Armagh Clan Éireann through to the semi-finals in Ulster. Derry champions Glen also through, beating Scottstown. And St Thomas's won the Galway county final in hurling, 20 points to 17 win over Clarenbridge. I really enjoyed. I have to admit, I kind of went away from Formula 1, lads, for a long time. I was wondering where there was no refuelling yesterday. And that's been out of the game for quite a long time. And it was interesting to come back to Formula 1 and watch the great race between Hamilton and Verstappen yesterday. Much safer, obviously, the 2 stoppages. When I watched Formula 1 religiously when I was a kid, and Prost and Senna and Mansell and Piquet and all that kind of thing in the 80s and 90s, it was a bit more raw and a bit more dangerous. And obviously it's better now that it's much more safe, but didn't seem the most safe track. It was a quirky track, I felt, in Saudi Arabia, fast track, a lot of quirky turns and not much room. But there's a lot more, I would say, administrative and authoritative power on drivers in the way they drive. And Max Verstappen got penalised, and then we'll have to see if it's going to come out that he broke deliberately to put the kibosh on Hamilton. But it's going to be a fascinating. Will they both go off at the same corner now next week in Abu Dhabi, like Prost and Senna did in 89 and in 90? So I was fascinated to see it. And the coverage on Sky Sports is fantastic. Martin Brundle does a great job. It really is. The no expense spared. They're in the pit lane and all the interviews, and like obviously it's part of the contract and everything, but everybody is just so accessible. Like Max Verstappen, I think, wasn't too happy. He walked off the podium. He still did 3 interviews. He did an interview with the Formula 1 officials. Then he did an interview with Sky, and he did an interview for being the best driver of the race. It's just he's the villain. He's the villain of the piece, Max Verstappen. He's he's got a bit of an anger to him, and that's not a bad thing. And Lewis Hamilton has obviously won 7 world titles, so there's Schumacher records on the line. There's so much on the line in Abu Dhabi next Sunday. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. John Duggan.
All right, lads. Cheers.
Right, we brought you live and exclusive radio commentary of 2 Premier League games on Sundays off the ball. Nathan and Graham Gartland called Manchester United's first game under Ralf Rangnick, and Keith Tracy joined Stephen Doyle on commentary for Aston Villa's 2-1 win against Leicester City. Here's Tracy on the Gerrard bounce.
You know, we saw the full-backs maybe, they were really pressed back into their own half, Matty Cash and Ashley Young, by the good attacking player Leicester City. But that all changed in the second half, and you'd have to put that down to good coaching.
Yeah, well, you could see, I highlighted Harvey Barnes in the first half. He looked like he had the beatings of Matty Cash all day long, and it proved to be, when you see his goal, once or twice he left Cash behind, and the centre-halves weren't coming across to help him. But in the second half, as the build-up was playing in the centre of the pitch, you could see that Harvey Barnes wanted the ball, but Cash was coming with him. He was prepared to leave that gap in between the 2 centre-halves, and it was just a lot more solid. And as the ball was travelling to Harvey Barnes, you could see Matty Cash was on his way. So Harvey Barnes didn't really have a lot to do in the second half, because Matty Cash defended so well. And offensively, well, he was brilliant. He kept Matty Cash in his own half, Harvey Barnes in his own half quite a lot. So when Harvey Barnes did get the ball, he was 70-80 yards away from the Villa goal, and when he got close to the goal, Matty Cash was all over him. He was really marking him tightly. And the rare occasion that he did get away from in the second half, Marvellous McCanza was coming over there, Douglas Luiz, and as you say, John McGinn gave him a good hand as well. So, but that would have kept Stephen Gerrard at half time. Sometimes when you're playing, you can't really spot these things in real time. So I think Gary McAllister and Stephen Gerrard identified that, and I think that was a little bit of a turning point, because the one the out ball that Leicester always had was the Harvey Barnes 1v1 and go from there. When that avenue finished for Leicester, it got a bit dull. That's when Villa really started to get on top. And for me, Leicester could have got something out of that game, but I think Villa deserved the win in the end.
The other thing.
Yeah, that's reaction to Stephen Gerrard and his first 4 games as Aston Villa manager. It's been quite the first 4 games, 3 wins out of those 4 games, and he's certainly the man who's taking him in the right direction at the moment. You can get plenty more from our weekend football on the OTB Sports app or on youtube.com/off the ball. We are turning our attention now, though, to rugby. Alan Quinlan, host of the Red 78 podcast, is with us. Alan, how are you getting on?
Good on yourself.
Yeah, good, thanks. I guess last week when we heard Felipe Contepomi and a few other Leinster voices saying that the video was going to be a hard watch and that there would be plenty of tough analysis, we all should have known what was going to happen on Friday night.
Yeah, I think probably the first 20 or 30 minutes, you think we really thought it was going to be a tight game. Connacht brought that energy and confidence and accuracy and played really well in those first 20, 30 minutes. And I think I always think that's crucial when you're away from home playing against a very strong side, that you can settle into the game and ask questions of the opposition. And Leinster were patient, and then they were ruthless. Second half performance was, they just blew Connacht away, and excellent performances throughout their side. They were full value for the win.
Was Harry Byrne better on Friday compared to the substitute appearance previous week?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. It wasn't a perfect performance, but he was a lot better. But the forward pack were in front of him were so much better, and the quality of ball they delivered to him, and he was very good. I think, as the whole Leinster team were. I think their attack and their pace and their attack was back to what we know they can deliver, and they were continuously getting over the gain line, and as I said, had to weather that storm in the early parts of the game. And to be fair to Connacht, they threw everything at Leinster, and you think when Mac Hansen scores that first try, brilliant kick from Jack Carty, you think that they're going to be well in this game for the whole lot of it. And Leinster score, and then Sammy Arnold scores, and you think this is the real deal. This is going to be a tight game and a real dogfight. But Leinster's quality and their accuracy and pace and tempo was absolutely brilliant.
What's a reasonable expectation for Connacht over this next little while, Alan? Obviously, the conversation is going to turn to Europe and talk of finally getting out of the pool stages, as it were. I guess we can still call it that. Out of the pool stages this season is perhaps a reasonable objective. Do you see it that way, that the knockout stages can be a place where Connacht land this year?
Yeah, I've been looking at the pools. Obviously, Europe is on next for the next couple of weekends, and then you've got the Irish derbies. It's for each of the Irish provinces. You look at these games are really crucial and can be season defining. They're very, very tough games. I think Connacht and Leinster obviously both have home games, and to start at home is always a better place to be. I think you get a chance to, I wouldn't say it is easier. It's a little bit easier to prepare. It's a little bit easier to get your head around it. You're not on a plane traveling somewhere, and it's harder for the opposition. And Europe has shown that to us over the years, that away wins are difficult. Connacht are very difficult to beat in the sports ground. They have Stade next week at the weekend, and I watched the Stade La Rochelle game last night. Stade beat Rogers La Rochelle, and they were 20 points to 6 down at one stage in the game, and they won 25-20. And I was very impressed at their power, their physicality. You just never know with the French sides and how they'll travel to Galway. They'll be delighted with that win last night. But you think that's a great opportunity for Leinster to get up, or for Connacht to get up and running. And then they've got two incredibly difficult back-to-back games in round 2 and 3 against Leicester. They're away in Leicester the following week. And in Europe, you've got to try and pick something up on the road. They do play Stade in the 4th game away from home. And it just depends where Stade Francais are at that stage. It's going to be very difficult for them to get out of the group, I think. And I think a reasonable expectation, you just never know with Europe on. You put games down on paper and you think, yeah, they're winnable games. Of course they are. I think the Leicester games, Leicester are capable of going to the sports round the way they're going in the Gallagher Premiership this year, and that's going to be a very difficult game for them. But I think they've got to beat Stade at home, beat Leicester at home in the 3rd game, and then hopefully go to France and to Paris and get a win. I think they can win 3 games there, and if they do, they're out of the group. They're into the round 16 games, and you never know what the draw is going to do for you. I think ultimately, and being respectful to Connacht, I think that'd be a brilliant achievement to get into the round 16 games. But they've got to keep tipping away in the league. It's going to be difficult for 4 Irish provinces to get into Europe next year, and that's where you want to be, and that's where Connacht need to be. I think that's probably something that, are they going to win the Champions Cup? Look, it's highly unlikely. It's a very difficult competition to win. There's some really top teams in it, but being in Europe next year it's like in the Premiership getting into the Champions League, and that's a must for Connacht, and they've got to manoeuvre their way through the URC and make sure that they get enough points and they're in the position to make Europe next year.
Was there something specific they could have done in the second half to interrupt the flow of the game when it was getting away from them? Like, I guess we're looking for signs of progress, and certainly in the first half it looked like there was loads of progress. But when the game gets away from you in a performance like that, what can you do when you're Connacht and you're up against it?
I think it's not
the Ireland side.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Ger, because they're not a side that kind of slow the game down and kind of hold on to the ball and are kind of boring at times, when sometimes you have to be, and kind of really they kick a lot and squeeze the life out of the opposition. They're a side that keep playing. I think that's part of the way that they have to go about their business. I think a little bit of control and stopping the flow and momentum. But look, we've seen this with Leinster so many times, and teams who play Leinster, if you don't slow down the breakdown, win those collisions, stop them from getting gain lines, it can be very difficult for any side playing against them. So you just look at the work rate of Van der Fleer and Ryan Baird. I thought Ryan Baird was outstanding. I just think he's an incredible athlete. At one stage, the ball was kicked up the field in the second half, and you have the second row chasing down a full back, Aaron McNulty. And I was just like, how the hell did he get there that quick? It's phenomenal work rate, and I think they're so fit and energetic, and that desire to make tackles. Maybe Connacht could have held on to the ball a little bit more and just kind of taking the sting out of Leinster. But like I say, when Leinster recycle the ball that quick, Ger, it's very difficult to stop them. I think they got a bit shell-shocked with the early tries after half-time. I think that was an issue. And that was something that they got the Larmer try right after half-time was just, and it was easy. It was off a line out. It looked like Connacht just got very, very compressed. And, Larmer has to step back in the end. Hugo Keenan probably could have scored it himself, and then Larmer steps back in. I just think that try, and, Doris has tried in a couple of minutes later, it was game over. I think they dropped their heads, and maybe they believed they were going to be able to do it. So it was probably a mental thing, and then lacking a little bit of control.
Okay. There are obviously things you can work on. Like
for sure, you learn from it, Jack. You learn from that, yeah. And you learn to take. It's not easy to take this thing out of the game when you're playing against a very good side, but somebody's got to come up with a massive turnover or a big hit to stop. Leinster just kept getting over the gain line, and look, as I said, when the ball is on a plate for Luke McGrath like that, they're running onto it, and it's hard to get your defensive line set.
Yeah, and just like we've been talking about Connacht and the progress they were making, and how it hasn't been straightforward, hasn't been like a very straight line, and that's a bit of a setback for them. So it's very interesting to see how they deal with that over the next couple of weeks. From Leinster's perspective, the value of actually getting a game and getting that team out to play as much rugby as they did together was hugely important, because while most of them have been working on patterns together at Ireland, they haven't been doing it with Leinster, and they have got obviously slightly different game plans. So they're in a much better situation than, say, Munster, for example, who haven't had the opportunity to get all their players back playing together.
Yeah, and you want to try and have continuity going into Europe, and it's a very valid point. They haven't had a lot of time with the internationals this year, and they're lucky enough. They're at home to Bath, who've lost 9 games in the GAA Premiership. They're going dreadful, so it's a relatively, even though they won't say it, it's a relatively comfortable situation for Leinster going into Europe this week, and I think they're in a good place. They bounced back. They showed a reaction which you want when you lose a game, when you come out with fire in the belly and you bring an aggression and intensity to your game. And I think that's what will please Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster, that the reaction was really good. And reintegrating these internationals, it's not always easy. We expected probably the week before, the second string group, they've been really good for Leinster in the league in the last number of years and beating a lot of strong teams. But having the luxury of getting so many internationals back, and they're in a good place and good shape at the moment.
I ask you, to Divock Origi, we were talking about this a little bit earlier on. Obviously, he scores off the bench, is the happiest man in the world afterwards. Klopp is saying, I hope at some point he finds a manager who plays him more often than I do. Is there a bang of Divock Origi off some of the players at Leinster at the moment who are in a great system, happy to be there? Or do you feel like at some point in the next couple of years we're going to see more players demanding more game time and wanting to leave and trying to further their careers?
Yeah, if I was one of the players, you look at someone like Max Deegan, who got capped a couple of years ago and was probably ahead of Jack Conan, Caelan Doris. He was involved in the Irish team, very close. I think he's got a couple of injuries. Does he stay there and does he keep going the same situation for the next 3, 4, 5 years? It just depends on the person. I always said, if you're very close to the side, even if you don't get in it, you continuously believe you're going to get in there, and you're a vital part of the group. I always thought when I played with Munster, it was really difficult for Mick O'Driscoll. He was involved in Irish squads, and Paul and Donnacha were ahead of him. Then Donnacha Ryan came on, and these guys, the two of them were good enough to be internationals, but the two ahead were just so far ahead, if you like, as regards they were starting for Ireland. And Miko went to Perpignan at one stage, and then he came back and he became, a real important leader in the group for many years, and played a vital role. So it just depends. They have so many back rows, the out half situation, lots of young players, outside backs as well. Do they stay? It depends if they believe they can get onto the team, and if they get enough URC games and maybe being involved on the bench in Europe, is that enough for them? It just depends on the individual. But it is a situation with this current group that some of them are if they want to try and further their careers and get onto the Irish team and challenge the guys who are ahead of them in Leinster, maybe they're going to have to look. And this is going to be a continuous situation for Leinster. They don't want to lose players. They want to keep as much depth as possible, but it's down to the individual. And I think over a period of time, I don't know if you could do 5 or 6 seasons like Origi. Maybe if you score vital goals like he's done, and you're loved by the fans and all that kind of stuff, but not paying. I think he's 34 minutes. played in this season or last season, and I can't remember the stats, but for these players, some of them, yeah, I think they will look for more minutes, and then you've got to knock on the manager's door and see what he's thinking, and then if he tells you you're close, you have to see some of that. But it's a situation they're always going to have to deal with.
One last thing we just wanted to ask you about. Sorry, go for it, Ger.
No, I was just going to ask, is there anything about Munster? Are you hearing anything from any whispers about how they're getting on?
Hearing different things. I'm hearing that they're ploughing on with the team and the academy players, the internationals, and some club players to try and prepare. They may know something more later in the week with the players in South Africa if they get back Wednesday, Thursday. It just depends. It's just so many moving parts of this, Ger. If they've got do they have to quarantine when they come back into Ireland now after doing their quarantine in South Africa? Of course, they'll have to have negative PCR tests, but maybe those guys will have a better option of going to Wasps at the weekend. The players at home, they're all quarantining at home, and I've said this: they're not finished until Saturday. Very difficult situation. It depends on the UK government if they'll allow them in on Saturday or even Sunday morning. So we probably don't know for sure what's going to happen. And it's absolutely crazy. The more you think about it, the situation, and I know a lot of people will talk more about it this week, and you'll have a clearer picture of who's going to play. But it's really tricky. If they can get any couple of players on the bench, I think that will be their goal, to try and either get some players who are at home or some of the guys who are in South Africa, if they can get some of those on the bench. And then we'll start dissecting how many minutes these guys have played in the last 7 or 8 weeks. But that's the best of a bad lot, really, even if you're in that situation. I think it's going to be intriguing to see what happens.
Just wanted to ask as well then, finally, Alan, about the Thomas Lavanini suspension. Obviously that pretty sickening hit on Cian Healy a few weeks ago. The 6-week suspension was the initial sanction, and then they mitigated the sanction by 2 weeks for good behaviour, apology and remorse, despite a couple of things flying in the face of that, stating that he didn't believe it was a red card offence, for example. What have you made of this and how it's been handled in general?
Shocking, to be honest. I think that hit on Cian Healy was, I don't know what other people think. I thought it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I know players kind of can get caught and show, people flying into rucks and stuff like that, and hit players and get red cards. I just thought that was a really, really cynical, nasty challenge on Cian Healy. He was on his knees. It could have resulted in a very, very serious injury for Cian Healy. And I've nothing against Thomas Lavanini per se. I don't know the guy. I've watched him play, and I think his aggression is a real issue. Backed up with that aggression, he's absolutely huge, and he's a very, very strong fella. I just thought the challenge was terrible, and for a player to get 5 weeks for that, I think is wrong. And it's kind of been swept under the carpet a bit. It hasn't been picked up that much. People are not discussing it. There's so many podcasts out there and rugby analysis. And I'm surprised that this hasn't been spoken about more. I think this challenge was absolutely sickening. He's got 3 red cards at international level. For them to give him 6 weeks, a midpoint entry of that, and take a week off, and he potentially gets another week off if he partakes in a World Rugby course. He'll get it down to 4 weeks. I just think for those actions, it should have been minimum 12 weeks, and the player needs to learn himself. I just think it was a really, really bad sanction. It was a really poor sanction, I think, for an incident like that could have resulted in a serious injury for Cian Healy. And I just think it's wrong, and I was very, very surprised that he ends up missing 5 weeks and potentially now 4 weeks. They challenged it. They said it wasn't a red card. He's this absolute bullshit that you hear, their good behaviour and the way they presented themselves at the hearing. What's that got to do with anything? You get mitigation for that. It's baffling, to be honest. And I just think those kind of charges into rucks, and I know people would say pot kettle with me, but I just think that's an incident that can seriously injure somebody. And I think because of what's happened before in his record, it should have been a lot more. That's my opinion on it.
Was it a sense that the previous red cards just hadn't been brought into the question here at all?
I don't know. I think, and I just think if it was a once-off, you say, right, just heated a moment. But if you watch the incident again, Cian Healy's on his knees. He could have, I said this obviously a couple of times, that could have been a very, very serious situation. And I'm baffled by it. The player needs to just get a grip, get a hold, because he's renowned for these shoulder charges into rucks, and you can seriously injure somebody, and it's nasty and it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. And I just think that I was just very, very surprised that the player gets 5 weeks for that. It should have been a lot more.
For sure. Alan, great stuff this morning. Thanks many for being with us.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
Alan Quinlan there, host of the Red 78 podcast, which you can get on the OTB Sports app now. Right, coming up on OTB Sports Radio today, we've got Michael Conlon on OTB Gold talking after his Rio exit. State of the Union is coming up from 3 o'clock, and then the Classic is Champion from 4. OTB Gold then from 6 o'clock is Sonia O'Sullivan, and then Off the Ball is live in your radios as ever from 7 o'clock this evening. Up next this morning here on OTB AM, Cork GAA CEO Kevin O'Donovan will join us as we discuss the new Football Review Committee task force that has been put together. Is there a proposal B+ on the horizon? Potentially. We'll chat to him next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Are we allowed to enjoy this?
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
You stand back and you watch, you can see why these guys are top internationals.
Has he lost the plot here? Or is it just all good fun? I think it's good fun.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. It is 16 minutes past 9 on this Monday morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to be joined by Kevin O'Donovan in just a moment, because he is the Cork GAA CEO. He is one of the voices who came out last year in favour of Proposal B ahead of that special Congress, which of course caused so much debate. There was so much conversation around it. It was ultimately defeated because it fell short of the 60% required for change at Special Congress. It did get over 50% of the vote, so there is appetite for change, but there was a sense, certainly in the aftermath of Special Congress, that something needed to change on Proposal B, that if it was going to get over the line the next time, a few tweaks to that proposal would need to be brought to the table. We have a new task force. It is essentially the previous one overhauls, though the task force will be bringing proceedings and their findings ahead of the next Congress, and potentially then a special Congress at the end of next year. We'll have a brand new proposal on the table. And what's been really interesting is that in Kevin O'Donovan's annual report last week, this was discussed, and the idea of a Proposal B+ was touted within the report. And I'm delighted to welcome Kevin O'Donovan back to the show. Good morning to you, Kevin.
Morning, Owen. Morning, Ger. How are you?
Just to set the table here,
Thanks.
First off, Proposal B+, what does that involve?
Well, I suppose we all remember that day at Special Congress when there was a universal cry for change, is the way I would describe it. And I think we need to call that out now and go back to Proposal B. Everyone said it required tweaks. Both sides acknowledged that. So let's have some tweaks.
Let's go through those tweaks then. I think the first thing that you want to see potentially, or the first thing that has been suggested and that you would be in favour of, is that instead of Division 1, 2, 3 and 4, we would go 1A, 2B, 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B.
Yeah, and I wouldn't for a moment claim that as an original idea. We know we had those leagues in the past. And we know as part of the debate before Special Congress, a lot of well-informed commentators said that is a better league structure than 1 to 4. It's more egalitarian, it gives a better chance for people to climb. It's less of a cartel in Division 1, where we know there's a serious drop-off from Division 2 teams that are promoted on a pretty regular basis. That'll be forever debated, 1-4 or 1A, 1D. We're looking at our own county leagues in Cork for next year as well, and toying with that idea. Whether you mix the teams up a little bit more, or whether you have it completely cutthroat. So it's certainly not my idea. I do think it's a really good structure though, and I do think it addresses the Team 6 conundrum, in that for people who don't know the 1A, 1B model, it essentially means you take 4 Division 1 teams and you put them in 1A, you take 4 Division 1 teams and you put them in 1B, and you get 4 more from Division 2 and they join them. So you mix your leagues at that level. If you have the top 4 coming out of 1A and 1B, you have the top 8 teams. I hope we're not then going to the Team 9 conundrum, because there's a place called stop. So hopefully that would address the Team 6 issue.
Yeah, perhaps the place called stop might have existed before the Team 6 issue, but it did seem to be like a real bugbear of a number of people. I think James Horan, possibly the most high-profile person to come out and find issue with that. Do you feel at all that this gets diluted a little bit, that the attraction of the proposal B Division 1 was the top teams playing each other, and all throughout the divisions, teams of a similar standard playing each other, that you will have teams of a dissimilar standard going toe-to-toe more often in a 1A, 1B format?
Yeah, and I was discussing this with someone already this morning. There's a balance in that. It's the balance between mixing and giving a path to the top to teams, because we know Division 1 got very exclusive in football in recent years, and then balancing that with cutthroat competitions. The last time we balanced it in favour of cutthroat, this time we balanced it a little bit back towards giving teams a shot at the big teams. And remember, inside in those divisions, you still have 4 Division 1 teams, 4 Division 2 teams. So I don't think it's the same mix that we have now in provinces, where we have Division 1 teams playing Division 4. So this is all a balancing act. I would accept what you gain in one, you lose in the other.
The other thing, Kevin, from Proposal B Plus is a greater connection to the provincial championships, because this was the other real stick to beat Proposal B with at the time, that it kind of rendered the provincial championships meaningless. Whereas in the Proposal B Plus idea, what would happen is that if you won your province, you would get 2 points immediately going towards your division and your league championship, and if you finish runner-up in your province, you would get 1 point. Do you feel that will allay some of the fears that those empowering the provincial councils had around Proposal B?
To a degree, again, it's a balancing act. You give too much. You give too much of a reward for provincial competitions, and then you're undermining the summer championship competition. You give too little of a reward, and then we were told we were undermining the springtime provincial competitions. So it's very much a balancing act, but this is again tilting it back in favour of the counties who voted no, to see would this be enough to bring them on board. And it's also, I think, a very fair one, because it gives a value to it, but it's not undermining. I feel 2 points when there's 14 points up for grabs, 7 games, 14 points. Adding 2 more doesn't totally undermine it. Other models propose giving a direct route for provincial winners to All-Ireland quarterfinals and things. I think that totally undermines the summer, championship with the 7 games. So this is, again, balancing act. Can we tilt it back in favour of the provincial competitions? There's another more nuanced issue as well that I've alluded to, and I have drawn this out, and it has been submitted to Croke Park, where we could look at a slightly more concurrent calendar, whereby you could delay the provincial football finals and semi-finals, for example, put them into May, play 3 or 4 games out of the All-Ireland Samaguar 7-game championship ahead of that, and run a little bit more concurrently, but again, not going too far so as to undermine that summer Samaguar championship. So that's another one. As well as giving the points, you could stretch your provincial championship, running it a little bit more concurrently with the Samaguar All-Ireland championship. That would take away the concerns about the provinces being pushed early in the year. They would mix a little bit with the Samaguar. I have a calendar, it's not that complex. That's another way. As well as the points, we can look at calendar, because we were told that it was turning into a pre-season competition in February and March. So there's lots of tweaks without undermining the principles of Proposal B, which is regular, meaningful, competitive games. And that's where I get off the bus. I get off the bus if a proposal undermines that principle, whereas any tweaks to B, that's B+. That's just a new and improved version.
Can I just ask then, sorry, so Division 1A and 1B, and then the second tier of counties, Divisions 2A and 2B, what happens to them? What's their championship like, and what's their pathway to progress?
Yeah. So again, we're migrating from the existing B, so not a dramatic change. But the team, we still end up with 10 teams. So out of 1A, 1B, you pull the top 4 out of each. So surely that's the best 8 teams in Ireland in that year. And then for the last 2 spots, you give it to the winners of 2A and 2B. Now again, we'll be accused that people are skipping the queue. But again, I'll say we have all those principles in hurling to maintain a link between all groups and the winning of Samaguar. So the winners of 2A, 2B would take up the spots that the winners of Division 3 and Division 4 were going to take up in the original Proposal B. All other teams in Division 3 and 4 enter Tailteann Cup. And it's actually a much simpler motion to write now that you have everyone in 2A, 2B, all other teams enter Tailteann Cup.
Okay, and the groups in 1A and 1B, how do we decide how you end up in 1A and 1B so that it doesn't...
You'd start them on the 2020 league finishing positions. So if this was coming in 2022, if this was coming in 2023, which is the soonest it could come in, you get your league finishing positions from Division 1, end of 2022, and then you split your 4s. To go to Division 2, split your 4s. Division 3, split your 4s. Division 4, split your 4s. And I'm sure Croke Park have done this before with 1A, 1B, and we're back with a 1A, 1B in hurling now. There's novel ways of mixing that up as well over time once you'd set it up where you'd stop teams being in the same group every year. So perhaps you're with Dublin, Kerry this year, you're with Mayo, Tyrone next year.
Okay, so you can just make a plan for the future and say if this group becomes the 8 best teams, then we'll have to rebalance it so we make sure that we're not and there's always a route through the provincials if a team decides that they're the 5th best team in their 1A, but actually they're still the 5th best team in the country. There's still a route for them to get through the provincials. So there's a back door in essence.
Yeah, but I stop when people feel that the provincial winners must get this route straight to All-Ireland quarterfinals. The Samaguar 7-game competition, it becomes redundant because Dublin win their provincial competition. They're qualified for the All-Ireland quarterfinal. They can put out a B team for their 7 Samaguar games. It just does not bear scrutiny.
Yeah, that's for sure. So can I ask then, so that we've got a new football championship task force, the old one is non-existent. Is this going to be something that they are actively discussing? Is this going to be a proposal that will, I guess, make it to the floor either at a special congress next year or whenever it may be?
So yes to the first part, not sure to the second part.
Okay.
So yes, I've certainly submitted this to Croke Park immediately after special congress. I'm sure many others did. I'm sure they've got 50 other proposals. And like the 2A, 2B, the 1A, 1B, the extra point, none of these are my invention. They all arose during the debate. And I feel if our committee had met again, we would have put them in. And I said that to people before the debate at special congress. We would have made the tweaks if we were reassembled. So I'm certain they're being discussed. They're certain they're submitted. I'm certain they're being discussed. I really don't know what proposals will come out of the committee. What I am confident of, though, is that there will be motions to Congress this year, and I think that's fantastic, into February. I do think Larry McCarthy is doing a great job in turning it around so quickly. Because we even know, discussing it again today, it all gets a bit hazy. It's amazing how hard it is to restart a debate. So hopefully today might help in that regard.
Yeah, so like the expectation may be that it's on the floor, I'm speculating here, potentially early next year, and that it again is postponed until a special congress next year, given the importance of the motion. So we're talking the possibility of 2023 here.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely on 23. I think a championship format will be passed at Congress in late February. I really hope. Maybe I'm naive. I certainly hope so. There's a committee assembled. They're not like our task force of 2 years ago, starting with a blank sheet. This committee is starting, you could say, with B. I'm sure they have other proposals, but they haven't got 20 proposals, I would assume.
Okay. And like what's been really interesting then as well is, like, I guess you mentioned this in your report last week, the idea that this was the discussions around the last special Congress was a race to the bottom in terms of engagement, I think was the phrase you used. That was definitely something that was out there at the time, that this idea that, you know, there was no debate around this, that there was no conversation around what was actually going to be on the board at Congress, at special Congress last year. Whereas, as you say, there was a lot of consultation, there was months, years of work that went into this, and yet at the end of the day people were coming late to it and said that there wasn't enough debate around, there wasn't enough information out there. How much of a challenge is that now for the new championship task force to sort of change that perception that existed around the proposal that went to the last special Congress?
Yeah, I think it suited some people to say there wasn't enough debate, because that's what you do when you don't want change, is you say you want change, but you need more time and more debate. So that's a classic tactic. I don't want that. I don't think there was a motion, maybe with the exception of the opening of Croke Park for foreign sports, to use the quote, had more debate around it ever. Like, we brought in rule changes about cup presentations and various things that weren't debated at all. This was tossed and turned. And I must say it was due and thanks to yourselves and Off the Ball too. You kick-started the debate when it was slow to get going. I remember being at a county committee meeting 2 months before a special Congress and begging people not to sleepwalk into Congress. Those were my words. I'm here now 3 months before the next one, begging the same thing. Don't tell me it's too late the night before. I'm ready to debate now. Please throw in the ball. So I think it's a bit disingenuous when people say they need more time. How long more are the players going to wait? You know, they've had 2 years of COVID, another year of uneven championships this year. You were 22, you wake up, you're 25. How long more are they going to wait? So, and with regard to the standards of the debate, I'd be unhappy with that. I was on the committee with good people. We all had different ideas. That was really why there was 2 proposals came out of the committee too, is there was disparate views within the committee. And to hear some of the shellacking we got since then, I think it would have been good if somebody had come out and defended the committee. If it was a committee in Cork that I appointed to do work, or our county board appointed to do work, and they were subjected to those kind of comments, I'd be coming out to defend them.
What needs to happen now, do you think, in terms of making sure that the information gets out there? Like, I was talking to somebody recently, and the way that we've gone around our referendums is that we've had the Citizens' Assembly. It feels a little bit like the model that we have at the moment, where you try and make change, is too difficult. The standard to get to 60% for big change in the GAA doesn't really work, because Congress is a thing that was set up 120 or whatever it was years ago, and it hasn't really changed. So if there were specific lessons that we could do between now and the next Congress, what needs to happen in your view, Kevin, that the conversations are more honest for a start, and less shellacking, and more about, well, what are the outcomes here and what are we trying to achieve?
Yeah, I really don't know. Just stick to the issue. Just stick to regular, meaningful, competitive games, and we find a route to that. With regard to the institutions of the state, that's for another day. You can't discuss the rules of the game with the referee while the match is on. So I'd be all for that discussion about our institutions of the GAA at a later date, but not while there's an issue live. We have a similar issue in Cork at the moment, where people are discussing about disciplinary hearings and so on, and wanted to have debate during the year. And I said we couldn't have it while there was live cases. We'll have it at the end of the year. So this is a live case now. With regard to the structures of Congress or anything, that's for another day. I just hope there's honest and open debate. And I think people see through that too. I think people were very well informed by Special Congress. I think the reason it failed was not a lack of information. It was a lack of people willing to support it for good reasons. We hit 51%. How do you hit 60%? How do you hit 70%? You go and take a long look in the mirror. You see, where did we get it wrong? And you come back for more.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, lads.
Kevin O'Donovan there, Cork GAA CEO, on the line. It is 9:32 on this Monday morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette. put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Right, you can join us again tomorrow, by the way. We're live every morning from 7:30. Tomorrow we're going to be talking Champions League with Graham Hunter. Magician Keith Barry joins us, and we're hearing from John Stiles, son of Nobby, who is leading calls for the PFA to support families of footballers suffering from dementia. Right now, though, we're bringing you more reaction to the weekend sport. Here's Keith Tracy and Graham Gartland, part of our Premier League commentary teams, reacting to Sunday's football.
So Manchester United get victory in Ralf Rangnick's first game in charge. It was a hard-fought 1-0 win against Crystal Palace. Graham Gartland was alongside me on commentary. How different, Graham, was a Ralf Rangnick Manchester United from a Ole Gunnar Solskjaer Manchester United of a fortnight ago?
They were obviously a little bit better because they won the game. They had stopped winning games under Solskjaer, so they were a little bit better in that sense. The first half an hour was probably what you expect to see, in that they were a lot more aggressive with the ball, but they were a lot more aggressive without the ball, but they were a lot more aggressive with the ball, I thought, as well in the first half hour. They ran at Palace, the runners in behind. Rashford, Sancho caused an awful lot of trouble. Fernandes was picking up little pockets. So in that sense, I think their aggression and their intensity was a lot better than it had been in the first half hour, but then the game just fizzled out then.
That first half an hour, was that clear signs of Ralf Rangnick after one training session and a couple of conversations, or is that just a natural reaction to a change of manager?
Do you know what? It's a good question, and it could be a bit of both. I think when your new manager comes in, you're obviously lifting. You want to show them, well, this guy's been brought in as what they call is a pressure coach. So we're going to show, we're going to push, and we're going to be on the front foot and try and press teams. There was a clear sign that they were going to press from the outside, especially from the likes of Nathaniel Klein's side. That Rashford went and Fernandes went, and they were going to make them try and play across to Gilroy, who was a right-sided defender playing on the left-hand side, and they're hoping that he coughs up the ball playing off his left foot. And it worked a couple of times. Again, we had spoke before the game about when you win the ball high up, your job is to win it as high as close to goal as possible and go and hurt them and go on. So your pressure is to score. And they had a couple of half chances from that, but it's going to be hard for United to replicate that for 90 minutes in a game because they're just not used to it. They're physically not used to it and they're mentally not used to it. So you're only going to see snippets of this every now and then in the game. It lasted for 25 to a half an hour for United in the first half, but they couldn't continue it in the second half.
Yeah, it's interesting about trying to keep it going for the full 90. I don't ever remember a manager coming into the Premier League with so much hype and expectation about how they're going to play tactically and stylistically. Even when Jurgen Klopp came into Liverpool, there was an expectation of a change, but nothing as transformative as what everyone's expecting over the coming weeks and months with Rangnick. Manchester United play again Wednesday, Sunday. It's relentless. How difficult is it going to be to get their fitness levels up to what he needs, but also to actually get to spend some time in the training ground to implement it? Because is it something that needs time in the training ground?
Yeah, I do. I agree. I think it does need time in the ground. You can't do something in a match that you haven't done all week. You can't just go turn it on. Footballers aren't like that. Certain players at a certain level can and they can buy into things, but it needs to be repetitive and it needs to be muscle memory and all that for players to go through. Well, this is hurting, but I need to dig in. Again, people obviously talk about Klopp. The reason Rangnick is spoke of like this is because he introduced Klopp to this type of football. He introduced Tuchel to this type of football. So they're expecting big things from the fella who taught these lads how to do it. So that's why the hype is there as well. And they're going, well, we're going to press like them. We're going to press like the top teams. And it's something United have craved in the last while because especially when you see a rival like Liverpool doing it a lot, that they're thinking, well, we want that. We want to play up the pitch. We want to squeeze teams. We want to strangle teams. We want to take the life out of teams. We want to be dominant. And that's what they're looking at and seeing. We want that, but it's going to take time. It took Liverpool a long time. Like, Liverpool lost the league by a point in one of the greatest title races of all time in terms of the quality. Them and Man City, they still lost the league. United have a long way to go before they're able to challenge in terms of how they play with Rangnick in charge.
You can see why Manchester United supporters crave that sort of style, though, because even in that first half an hour, it suits Old Trafford.
Yeah.
The momentum, the turnovers, every time. It was electric in that first half an hour.
Yeah, but again, with that, the quality needs to come. If you're going to have 80% in pass accuracy, you need to be playing a lot more through balls and a lot more excitement and fizzing things across goal. Everybody goes back to how United played before under Ferguson and stuff, but it was always exciting. There was always something on the game. Even when they were up against the great Arsenal side, when they set in and played a 4-5-1 defensively, they still played with an aggression about them, and Old Trafford behind them got them over the line at certain times, and they've missed that in the last few years.
Looking at some of the individuals involved in this, before anyone criticises for talking about Manchester United under Rangnick after 90 minutes, all this with a massive health warning of things could change quickly. Cristiano Ronaldo's role within the team today, has it suggested anything for what might happen in the future?
No, Ronaldo's modified his game a lot in the last few years, that he's just become the ultimate goal scorer. He's all about how many goals he can get, how he can do it, but that's to help his team, because he knows goals is what wins games. So he's still probably one of the, there's not many great number 9s around in world football at the minute, and he's turned himself from a flying winger into one of the best strikers in the world, if not the best at times. At 36 years of age, he's going to find it tough to play in that amount of games, but he's never had a problem with his fitness or looking after himself as well. He's changed the game in that way. So, but again, it's his first game in charge. You have to see where Ronaldo fits in. He dropped in and linked the game really well in the first. The only time he looked sort of tired was the last 10 minutes, or the last 5 minutes, when you alluded to him falling a couple of times where he misstepped on the ball. But other than that, his link-up play and his quality was really good. He just didn't. He only had half chances in the game today.
I mentioned it before the game, because he scored, I'm going to take credit for it, saying that maybe Fred is somebody who actually could find a role under Rangnick. He's taken a huge amount of criticism that he's not Declan Rice, that he doesn't give United the control he needs in midfield. Maybe in this new system, actually, United don't want as much control in midfield, that actually his sort of more frantic style of play may suit what United become.
Yeah, he touched on it as well. What you do with the ball is as important as having the ball, and a lot of the times when you go back to Rangnick's way of playing is that he likes chaos, he likes high turnovers, because the more turnovers in the game leads to more chances, as long as you're on the right side of them turnovers. I found Fred very frustrating to watch him, McTominay, in the second half, because I just thought he took too many touches of the ball and slowed the game down a little bit. But the one bit of quality and composure comes from Greenwood to say to Fred, here, go and wrap your foot around that, because it's a lovely weighted pass back to him, and Fred's puts it in the top corner. But again, maybe Fred might suit it, because he does give the ball away, but he does win the ball back as well. So maybe he's one that would suit. But in terms of the wingers that United have, or the outside strikers, Rashford, Sancho, Greenwood, all these lads, they can run. They're young players, they're fit and healthy, and they can run. So Rangnick's way of playing should suit them, that it's more high energy, they're working off your attributes, which is pace and power, and obviously quality then kicks in as well. So these lads should flourish under the likes of Rangnick.
While they do have a hectic fixture list like everybody else, it's actually a very inviting fixture list over the next 6 weeks or so. They don't have any of the top 8 to face until they play West Ham towards the end of January, and even then there's probably another month before they take on the title contenders. Do you think United can finish top 4 this season?
I do, in the sense that I can't see West Ham being the one team that's playing well at the moment. Spurs has obviously won today under Conte. Might have a little. My thing is, who else is going to challenge them? So if United go on a good run over Christmas with the games you mentioned that they could see themselves pushing for 4th place. But my thing is, well, who's there to challenge them? I think the top 3 are going to be the top 3. I think there's nothing that touches them this year. After that, whether it's United, West Ham, Spurs, I don't know who else goes into the mix. Arsenal have been okay as well, but then they lose at Anfield and then they go and lose at Old Trafford. So anytime they come up against a team that's above them, they tend to struggle. Everyone else around them they can beat. So I think it's between West Ham, Arsenal, Spurs and Man United.
And a quick word on Crystal Palace. I guess in their position, you come to Old Trafford, if you get a chance you have to take it. Jordan Ayew hasn't scored a Premier League goal in it's 41 games at this stage. They take that, maybe they come away with all 3 points. Yeah,
and it was probably their best spell in the game. Gallagher got on the ball a little bit more, but I thought that big players let them down today. Other than the defenders, Guy and Thompson were good. Nathaniel Klein actually played well in the second half, considering he was struggling in the first half. Mitchell was decent. Zaha looked really off the boil today. His lack of quality, even his demeanour at times, he looked frustrated that he wasn't getting free kicks and stuff. Kouate in midfield coughed up the ball an awful lot, looked very tentative and nervy. Gallagher then doesn't get on the ball enough because he's not getting fed off Kouate. Benteke was poor in the first half, but they still get the biggest chance of the game. Even taking away the goal from Fred, it's not really a chance, it's a shot from the edge of the box. Palace still had the best chance in the game. That's what worries about United, is the back 4 never really looks solid for the whole game. There's always little bits of moments where you think, I'm not quite sure about the either centre-back pairing or the full-back.
Keith, a really entertaining game. 2-1 it finished to Aston Villa this evening. And we'll talk about the performance in a moment of the Aston Villa team, but I'm sure psychologically to get over Leicester City in the table, up into the top half, that's going to be a huge boost for Stephen Gerrard when he goes out to train those players during the week.
Yeah, it's been an outstanding start from him. When you're coming down from Scotland, there is that question mark. Even with Brendan Rodgers, when he came back down, you're thinking, can he cut it with Leicester? He's obviously proven that he can. Played 4 games, Stephen Gerrard, won 3, lost 1 to Manchester City. Looked really good in the 3 games. Even looked really good against Manchester City. If we tell the truth, it was a loss, but it was a fighting loss, and that's something you can stomach as a Villa fan. And the one thing that stood out for me, I'm not trying to pick holes in Dean Smith. I actually think he was harshly treated in being let go. But the work rate, even in the first half, wasn't quite clicking. I know the Consa got the header, but just wasn't really. I got the little flick. It was the Buendia header, but it wasn't really clicking in the first half. But the work rate was there, the desire was there for me. And in the second half, they looked a lot more threatening, and the desire was still there. It was backed up, and it was just encapsulated with John McGinn when you see him going through them 3 or 4 tackles toward the end. I know the whistle was blown, but it's just the desire and the work rate of him. And when you see somebody like that who has bags of talent, but he has that desire and that fight to just go through 2 or 3 challenges, it just goes through the rest of the team. And you can see what Stephen Gerrard is working on. If he can just make them that little bit more defensively solid, I think that's a really strong Villa team. And I wouldn't say the sky's the limit, because the Premier League is that strong at the minute, but to be 8th, 9th, 7th, I think that's in around Villa's area.
Yeah, and we did see Stephen Gerrard and perhaps his assistant Gary McAllister, I'm sure, does great work in the changing room at half time as well, but they definitely had an effect on that game, because we saw in the first half Matty Cash was having a torrid time on the right hand side against Harvey Barnes. John McGinn perhaps wasn't getting out there and helping him enough. We saw the full-backs, maybe they were really pressed back into their own half, Matty Cash and Ashley Young, by the good attacking player Leicester City. But that all changed in the second half, and you'd have to put that down to good coaching.
Yeah, well, you could see, I highlighted Harvey Barnes in the first half. He looked like he had the beatings of Matty Cash all day long, and it proved to be, when you see his goal, once or twice he left Cash behind, and the centre-halves weren't coming across to help him. But in the second half, as the build-up was playing in the centre of the pitch, you could see that Harvey Barnes wanted the ball, but Cash was coming with him. He was prepared to leave that gap in between the 2 centre-halves, and it was just a lot more solid. And as the ball was travelling to Harvey Barnes, you could see Matty Cash was on his way. So Harvey Barnes didn't really have a lot to do in the second half, because Matty Cash defended so well. And offensively he was brilliant. He kept Matty Cash in his own half, Harvey Barnes in his own half quite a lot. So when Harvey Barnes did get the ball, he was 70-80 yards away from the Villa goal, and when he got close to the goal, Matty Cash was all over him. He was really, really marking him tightly. And the rare occasion that he did get away from in the second half, Marvellous McCanza was coming over there, Douglas Luiz, and as you say, John McGinn gave him a good hand as well. So, but that would have counted Stephen Gerrard at half time. Sometimes when you're playing, you can't really spot these things in real time. So I think Gary McAllister and Stephen Gerrard identified that, and I think that was a little bit of a turning point, because the out ball that Leicester always had was the Harvey Barnes 1v1 and go from there. When that avenue finished for Leicester, it got a bit dull. That's when Villa really started to get on top. And for me, Leicester could have got something out of that game, but I think Villa deserved the win in the end.
The other thing as well is that we saw the strikers, Ollie Watkins, Jacob Ramsey, getting into the box, and a couple of decent chances, but the fact that 2 goals came from the centre back Ezri Konsa, we've seen the full-backs getting goals under Gerrard, so maybe that's something as well that he needs to look at, is the strikers finishing and scoring goals, because they're the players that get paid the big money to score goals for you.
Yeah, well, of course, listen, the one that we look at, I think we can give Ramsey cut him a bit of slack. He's a young boy, he's still cutting his teeth in the Premier League. They still have Danny Ings to come in. I played with Danny at Burnley, and he knows the way to goal, and he's so, over 5 yards, he's electric. You don't see it until he's standing next to somebody. You see how quick he is over them 5 yards. A prolific finisher as well. So Villa still have him to come back as well. So Villa are going to get stronger, and across the same can be said for Leicester. They have a whole host of bodies to come back. So although I would be critical of Leicester today, you can sort of see it. It's not as strong a team as it could be with the amount of bodies to have out, particularly Yuri Tillemans. I think he's a big player for them. And Maddison, although he has the stats to back up that he's having a good period, I think he's come off the boil ever so slightly. He was quiet today, Daka working hard, but just didn't really click up front for Leicester. At times you could see the talent is there, but just didn't click as well as it did for Villa.
Come back to Leicester in a moment as well, but just to ask you as well about Villa, we've seen other players falling out of favour with the previous manager, Dean Smith. And again, it's not a criticism of him. These things happen at a football club. But we've seen Tyrone Mings coming back in. Marvelous Nakamba has been excellent under Gerrard as well. And just little things like that as well would also give Aston Villa supporters hope, I'm sure, when you see Gerrard working with players like that and they start putting in performances for him.
Yeah, well, if you're Marvelous Nakamba and you're in the building and you're not really getting a kick under Dean Smith, but then all of a sudden one of the best centre midfielders of the modern era comes in and he picks you to play, all of a sudden you're on cloud nine. You're thinking, well, if he fancies me, I should fancy myself. And all of a sudden your confidence is up. And like you say, over the last 4 games they've won 3, only lost to Manchester City. That's going to breed confidence as well. So really, really good. And I think with Gerrard coming in the building, I think everybody wants to prove that they can play football to a footballer, especially somebody as good as Steven Gerrard. So I think everybody at Villa, the work rate has gone a little bit higher, and it looks like they want to show their talent as well. And fair play to Steven Gerrard, because he's obviously given the lads the platform to go and do it. You see him once or twice, it was a bit edgy playing out from the back, but Gerrard is saying, listen, it will break down once or twice, the ball will end up in the back of our net, but that's the team I want and this is how I want to play. And you can see the crowd are going to have to come on board with that as well, because sometimes they were getting on their back when it was getting a little bit dodgy. But overall, you can see the stepping stones are there, the results are there for Villa. Really good and good to watch, and like I say, I'm really excited to see where they go.
You mentioned a moment ago that maybe 8th or 9th might be the kind of position they'd like to finish this season under Gerrard. That's a position that Leicester City, I'm sure, would have hoped to finish much higher than after their last couple of seasons, almost getting Champions League football. But it just seems to be coming apart at the seams for them at the moment. And the thing about the set pieces, about corner kicks, they conceded 10, which is the joint worst alongside Crystal Palace. You'd imagine within a team, and you've been in football teams where things are going wrong, when there's a perception from outside the club that there's a weakness there, it suddenly starts to become a thing, and maybe players are starting to lose confidence in each other. Don't trust the goalkeeper doesn't trust his defenders. I don't know how that works, but do you think that could be something that might be happening with Leicester City at the moment?
It could be. Obviously the opposition will highlight it, because the numbers don't lie. So Steven Gerrard would have had a look at that and thought, right, every time we get a chance to put it into the box, we're going to put it in with pace, make it dodgy for the goalkeeper. And at times, it really was lacklustre defending. There was one in the first couple of minutes where Schmeichel had a crowd of bodies around him, but he done well. He came out and got a fist on it. It went up in the air, and I think it was Thomas and Castagna, I think it was, the two of them just in the way of each other, none of them getting rid of it, and Villa ended up getting the ball, recycling and putting it back into the box. And at the highest level you will get punished for that. They didn't get punished for it today. Overall they did with the set piece. With that particular set piece they didn't. It's just something that needs to be worked on. But like I say, the opposition will highlight that, and they'll put even more balls into the box. So it's going to be highlighted more and more every weekend. And the more them numbers keep rising with the set pieces, the more the ball will keep coming into the box. So it's not going to get any easier for Leicester. They're going to have to start defending them really well. I think Johnny Evans and Soyuncu, big fans of them. I'd love to have them in any club I support. But at the minute, Johnny Evans just looks a little bit fragile. I know he has his injury worries. Looked really good today, but just looked a bit fragile. Sometimes when he's getting knocked about and he's in the wars, you're thinking, is he going to stick up with this? Is he going to come off? And it's just not. Soyuncu's come off the boil as well. So a whole host of bodies missing as well for Leicester. So there's a lot of things that need to be improved for Leicester. But like I say, with so many games coming over the next 6 to 8 weeks, if they can pick up a couple of wins, they could easily find themselves exactly where they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely, because Rodgers did prove in previous seasons that he could deal with injuries, bring players in and still get the results. You look at yesterday, the likes of West Ham beating Chelsea. They were the kind of results Leicester were getting when they were strong under Rodgers. West Ham seem to be the team now, that the outside team that might have a chance of getting the top 4 place. Do you think Leicester City could do what they did over the last couple of seasons, or do you think maybe that dropping into 11th place after 15 games kind of says to you, I don't think they're going to be too near the top 4 this season?
From what I've seen today, I wouldn't back them to break the top 4. I've come under a bit of criticism, because I have said, in my opinion, I think West Ham are a better team than United this season. I think they're better than Arsenal. I think they're the best of the rest, to be honest with you. I think they, on the whole, it's all going to be how far United go in the Champions League, how far West Ham go in the Europa League. That will obviously play a big part. But who's the better team for me? The better team for me is West Ham. I think they're the best of, obviously, Chelsea, City and Liverpool. I think West Ham slot in at 4th. Arsenal look to have hit a bit of form, obviously, as well. I think Conte will do good things with Spurs. Whether or not we see that this season, it might be a delayed reaction to next season. So there's a great race on. It's all over the Premier League. You know, we had Chelsea top for a stage yesterday, then Liverpool, then City at top, and all three of the bottom clubs are on 10 points, with Watford just 3 points above that. It's the strongest Premier League I've seen, and like I say, we still don't know who's going to, after we come into January, it will really start to take shape, and we'll start to see who's going to be the bottom clubs and who's really going to push away and be the top clubs.
As we heard from our own commentary team on the United Crystal Palace game, it didn't sound like a classic, but I suppose for a new manager like Ralf Rangnick coming in, a very disjointed team that he took over, it's just about getting that first result. You don't care how it comes, what score it is, even if it's someone like Fred getting the winning goal, you don't care, you just get the 3 points.
Well, that's it. It's nice for Fred as well, because he's come under a lot of criticism from a lot of people for his performances. So for him to get a goal to win the game today under a new manager could be just a little bit of a turning point for Fred in his Manchester United career, and I hope so, because he seems like a good lad. He seems very willing worker as well, and you can't really not like them lads. I know sometimes you can say he hasn't got the talent to be at United, but he's given 100% every week, week in, week out, and that's not something you can say about a lot of the United players. So yeah, United, I think Rangnick will just be happy to get the win. It's very difficult for him because he plays a pressing game, and with the amount of games that are going to come over the next couple of weeks for Manchester United, to do that sort of work on the training ground is very difficult. It zaps your legs to do them sort of runs in and out. So he won't really get to do the bulk of the work on the training ground. It will be done on match days. So it will be played out in our eyes, and it's going to be very interesting to see if he can do the press with Ronaldo, if he does it without Ronaldo, how he's going to go about it in the long run. But yeah, to get the win today wasn't a great game, but got over the line in the end, and I think the United fans will just be happy with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I suppose a lot of people mightn't have considered just that time on the training pitch and how hard it is to get in the middle of a season. But just to ask you finally then as well about that kind of moving around in the top three. Liverpool, you know, we saw it in our own league back here, Shamrock Rovers getting all those late winners and equalisers to get points on their way to win the league title. We've seen the past great Manchester United teams always knew how to get late results. Liverpool getting that one, Mo Salah setting up Divock Origi to get the winner against Wolves, and that's just the kind of thing that Jurgen Klopp will love to see, and the kind of thing that he will hope to give his side a good boost going over the Christmas period. Yeah, well, it just breeds confidence, doesn't it? When you play a game and it gets to the 90th minute and you see 5 minutes being added on, you're thinking, we've got a draw here, we just get out of Molyneux with a draw, we'll be happy enough. But they go and win the game, and not that any of the Liverpool players would have needed confidence because of the way they play, but just that little bit of extra even when we don't play well, when we don't think we're going to win the game, we still come up with something. And the one thing that's been thrown out at Liverpool over the last couple of years is that Chelsea and Manchester City have a much better bench than they do. Obviously the starting 11 is outstanding, but as you come away from that, a couple of injuries, Divock Origi and the likes coming on, you know, he gets a bit of a hard time, Divock Origi, but he scores important goals. You know, you only have to look back through his Liverpool career to see the important goals he scores. So if Liverpool can keep getting their boys to come off the bench and chip in when the starting 11 aren't really firing, they've every chance of doing it. And listen, I can't split them. I really can't split Chelsea, City, Liverpool. I don't know which way it's going to end up. Yeah, it really is hard to pick it out. But I suppose, looking at Manchester City last night, watching their game against Watford, wow, when they're pouring, they really are pouring. But it was interesting actually watching Jack Grealish, and I suppose maybe a man who's played as a winger, and he's maybe asked to play the centre role last night. But you just got the feeling at Grealish that he was almost trying too hard to score. That it just was, and he was becoming more and more frustrated then that it wasn't coming off for him. Yeah, well, I think that's the difference with being at Villa and being at City. I think when people got the ball at Villa, they were looking, where's Jack Grealish, where is he, we try and get him on the ball. At City, he's just another fish in the pond. You know, everybody on that pitch for City has outstanding ability and can do anything they want with the football. So they're not looking for him as much as they were. And you know, Jack he gets a lot of fouls, but you know, the City don't want to be winning fouls. City want to go past you and keep the counter-attack happening. When they break the line, they want to go and hurt you. So when Jack breaks the lines, he's happy enough to take the foul and restart from there. I don't think that's what Pep wants. He thinks when you break the line, go for the jugular, don't come back. And I think that's just a little bit of a mismatch with him and Manchester City at the minute. I think if he plays a little bit more like Mahrez or like Sterling, which is obviously a big ask of his, being a predominantly centre of the pitch player. But look, all the talent is there, and with Pep Guardiola, he's got a 6-year contract. The best of Jack Grealish is still yet to come. Great stuff, Keith. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think as a league, like, they've had a very difficult just when they're trying to have a fresh start and they're trying to put out all the positive stories around it. The growing, viewership, which is obviously going to grow because more countries are showing the game, the kind of Jay-Z link up, all this kind of stuff. But I think they're still struggling, and it's just something that's been a perennial for the league in whatever guise it's been for the last 10, 15 years. It's never really gotten a settled run under its feet. You had the Magners League, you had the Pro 12, you had the Guinness competition with the Italian and the South African teams coming in, and then now you kind of get rid of 2 South African teams at very short notice, try and bring 4 more in during a pandemic. It's been kind of chaotic all the time, and you kind of feel a little bit from the outside, in as much as you can feel for a professional sporting organisation, you kind of feel that they haven't had that set run, a bit of stability, and I think like Rory looks at it and joins in with Matthew Morgan, who's a Cardiff player who was I think he was in quarantine last week, and he said the league was a shambles, and then he kind of had a go at the Welsh government for not allowing them to come back after their trip to South Africa, and says, "Get us the F out of here, you clowns," which is the kind of stuff you don't really see from many leagues. And if the URC wanted to be a bit interesting, they might actually highlight this kind of stuff and say, look, this is a great league where you've got interesting sports, great characters, not afraid to say what they...
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward.